At our divorce hearing, my wife boasted, "I'll finally live off his fortune." The crowd laughed. I calmly passed the judge my envelope and whispered, "Check the date on her signature." Moments later, the judge laughed so hard, my wife turned ghost white. If you've never seen a courtroom turn into a full-blown comedy club, congratulations. You still have some faith left in the justice system. I, unfortunately, lost mine around the moment my soon-to-be ex-wife, Sabrina Hart, strutted into the courtroom like she was headlining a Vegas show. She had that smug, "I'm about to win" grin plastered on her face, a designer dress that probably cost more than my first car, and enough perfume to fumigate a small village. She sat down across from me, chin high, the very picture of arrogance wrapped in a $3,000 outfit. I could practically hear her internal monologue going, "I'll finally get what I deserve." Spoiler alert. She did, just not the way she expected. Now, let's talk about her lawyer. The man looked like he practiced his lines in front of a mirror every morning. Slick hair, slicker suit, and a voice so self-important it could have narrated a political documentary. He stood up, cleared his throat dramatically, and announced, "Your Honor, my client has been the emotional backbone of this marriage." I nearly snorted my coffee. Emotional backbone. Sabrina once cried because her Wi-Fi was slow. This woman treated minor inconveniences like national emergencies. I wanted to raise my hand and say, "Objection, Your Honor, he's confusing emotional backbone with drama queen in stilettos." But I stayed quiet. No need to rush the entertainment. I just leaned back in my chair, sipping that bad courthouse coffee like it was fine bourbon, and let the show unfold. Then it happened. Sabrina stood up. Oh, she was in her element. Theatrical, dramatic, voice quivering just enough to make it sound like pain, but not too much to mess up her lipstick. "Your Honor," she said, "I've been patient long enough. I will finally live off his fortune, like I deserve." And just like that, the courtroom went from quiet to reality TV chaos. Someone gasped. Someone else actually clapped. A guy in the back whispered, "Oh hell, this is better than Judge Judy." Even the bailiff looked up from his crossword puzzle. Meanwhile, I sat there calm as a monk on Prozac. I wasn't mad. I wasn't hurt. I was amused. See, I'd spent months preparing for this circus, collecting receipts, statements, and one little surprise that would turn her Oscar-worthy monologue into a blooper reel. I waited for her to finish her victim speech. She gestured a lot, like she was conducting a tragic orchestra. When she dropped the line, "He emotionally abandoned me," I almost asked if she was referring to the time I refused to attend her cousin's vision board party. Emotional abandonment, my foot. The judge, a patient woman named Judge Wong, kept adjusting her glasses like she was trying to process whether this was still a divorce hearing or an open mic night. Every few seconds, she'd glance at Sabrina, then at me, probably wondering how I hadn't just run into traffic by now. Sabrina's lawyer kept piling it on. "Your Honor, my client devoted her best years to this man." I wanted to say, she's 32. Her best years are still editing their resumes. But again, I stayed silent. I didn't even blink when he said, "She was his emotional support." My eyes might have twitched, though. Emotional support? She once told me, "Babe, I can't talk about your bad day right now. I'm recharging my energy." Then came my turn. My lawyer gave me a small nod. "The "You sure you're ready for this?" nod. I smiled, opened the brown envelope in front of me, and whispered to the judge, "Ma'am, before I respond, could you please check the date on her signature?" That one line changed everything. Judge Wong blinked, confused but curious. She took the document from my hand and started reading. Meanwhile, Sabrina looked at me like I'd just spoken ancient Greek. Her lawyer leaned in, probably praying I'd handed over an expired parking ticket or something. As the judge flipped the page, I leaned back again, hands folded. I didn't need to say a word. The silence in that room was electric. You could practically hear Sabrina's confidence deflating like a balloon at a toddler's birthday. Now, while she was panicking, I took a moment to reflect on how we even got here. Because honestly, 3 years ago, I thought she was the love of my life. The woman who made me laugh, who cooked, well, reheated, meals, who smiled like she actually believed in us. And now she was standing there, trying to convince a judge she was Mother Teresa with a shopping addiction. Her lawyer started sweating. Literally. His hair gel was losing the battle. Your Honor, perhaps this isn't relevant." Judge Wong raised a finger. Mr. Lewis, let me finish reading. Now everyone was paying attention. Even the court reporter looked like she was typing faster just to keep up with the drama. I could see the confusion spreading across Sabrina's face like bad contour makeup. She knew something was wrong. I smiled gently, just enough to let her know the script had changed. Then came the moment. The judge's eyes widened slightly. She looked at Sabrina, then at the paper, then back at Sabrina. The silence stretched. Finally, she said, Mrs. Hart, do you know what year this document was signed? Sabrina straightened up, full confidence again. Yes, ma'am. 2 years ago, right before we separated. Judge Wong pursed her lips, clearly trying not to smile. Interesting, she said slowly. Because according to this report, the pen used to sign this document didn't even exist 2 years ago. Boom. It was like someone had just announced free pizza in a college dorm. Heads turned. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. One old lady actually dropped her purse. Sabrina's lawyer looked like he'd just been told his car got towed. And me? I just sipped my coffee. Sabrina froze, blinking fast like maybe, just maybe, she could gaslight physics into changing its mind. That can't be right, she stammered. It's his word against mine. The judge chuckled. No, Mrs. Hart. It's science against yours. The courtroom erupted into whispers and muffled laughter. Even the bailiff's poker face cracked. Order, the judge called, but she was smiling too. Mr. Hart, where did you obtain this evidence? I shrugged. Just good record-keeping, Your Honor. Turns out, the emotional backbone of our marriage left a paper trail. The judge raised an eyebrow like she wanted to laugh, but had to pretend she was still running a courtroom. Sabrina sat down hard, eyes darting between her lawyer and me. She looked like a magician whose rabbit just sued her for fraud. Her lawyer tried one last desperate swing. Your Honor, surely we can disregard this minor discrepancy. Minor? Judge Wong snapped. Forgery is not a minor discrepancy, Mr. Lewis. This is a major legal issue. Sabrina's mouth dropped open like she couldn't believe her performance wasn't earning her sympathy. I almost felt bad. Almost. You'd think she'd stop there. But no, she doubled down. He's framing me. He's manipulating the evidence. Judge Wong sighed. Mrs. Hart, unless your husband invented time travel and used it exclusively to replace your pens, I think we're done here. Laughter. Real, loud, echoing laughter. The kind that fills the room and drowns out even the sound of Sabrina's dignity crumbling. I leaned back, smiling. Told you, honey, honesty's cheaper. That line got a few chuckles too. Even the stenographer coughed suspiciously into her sleeve. After that, the judge called for a short recess. As people filed out, strangers patted me on the shoulder like I'd just hit a game-winning shot. One guy even whispered, Bro, I don't know who you are, but you're my hero. Sabrina glared at me, eyes shooting daggers sharp enough to slice through titanium. You think this is funny? She hissed. I shrugged. A little. But don't worry, we're just getting to the good part. She stood up abruptly, heels clicking like gunfire on the marble floor, and stormed out of the courtroom. Her lawyer followed, muttering something about damage control. I stayed behind, calm, sipping the last of my now cold coffee. The judge passed by, shaking her head slightly. Mr. Hart, she said, you've got the patience of a saint. I smiled. Thank you, Your Honor. Took a few years of marriage to develop it. She chuckled. Well, let's hope the rest of this hearing stays civil. Civil? I said. With Sabrina? Ma'am, we're halfway to fireworks. That earned me one last amused look before she walked off. As I packed my documents, I couldn't help thinking I'd survived round one. The circus had opened, the clowns had performed, and I'd just handed the ringmaster her own rope. It wasn't about revenge, not yet. It was about control, about showing her that calm doesn't mean weak, and silence doesn't mean stupid. I'd let her run her mouth, bask in her spotlight, and dig her own grave, all while smiling like a man who'd already written the ending. And believe me, the ending was going to be legendary. Because in this courtroom circus, the joke wasn't on me anymore. It was on the woman who thought she could turn lies into luxury, and forgot that sometimes karma wears a suit and carries an envelope. Let's rewind 3 years. Back to when I was still stupid enough to believe in meant to be. If I could go back in time, I'd slap that version of myself across the face with a prenup. It all started at a charity gala. Gala is a fancy word for rich people pretending to care while comparing watches. My business partner, Caleb had dragged me there, insisting, "Dude, you got a network. You'll meet investors, entrepreneurs, maybe even a decent woman." I didn't realize network meant dodging real estate agents who called themselves visionaries and influencers with podcast voices. The moment I walked in, I smelled overpriced perfume, saw too many tuxedos, and immediately wanted to fake a medical emergency. Then she appeared, Sabrina Hart, or as my future therapist would later call her, the trigger. She was standing under the chandelier, laughing too loudly at something a man in Gucci loafers said. Her laugh had this melodic confidence, like she thought the world was background music for her life. She wasn't donating, of course. She was there for the free champagne and selfies with anyone who owned a yacht. I remember thinking, wow, she's gorgeous. Probably dangerous. Perfect combination. She wore a gold dress that shimmered every time she moved, and I swear the lighting adjusted itself just for her. If confidence were currency, she was already a billionaire. She caught me staring, because apparently my brain had temporarily gone offline, and she smirked. "You look bored," she said, walking straight toward me. I smiled. "I'm calculating my escape route." She laughed like I was the funniest man alive. That should have been my first red flag. No one finds me that funny. But at the time, I thought, finally, someone gets me. Turns out, she got me all right. My attention, my trust, and later, my money. We started talking, and within minutes, she had me hooked. She was witty, charming, and dangerously good at pretending to listen. I told her I worked in finance, ran a few companies on the side. She said, "Oh, I love ambitious men." I should have heard the cash register sound effect right there. She said she was a lifestyle consultant. Translation: she gave advice no one asked for and somehow made money from it. "I help people curate the best version of themselves," she said. I nodded, pretending to understand, while thinking, so? Instagram with invoices? We spent the rest of the night talking about everything from travel to coffee preferences to childhood dreams, though hers all involved being rich. She told me about her ex-boyfriends like she was reading Yelp reviews. "They just couldn't keep up," she said. I laughed. "I'm pretty fast," I replied. And that, apparently, was the bait. The night ended with her giving me her number, written neatly on a cocktail napkin, like a vintage move from a rom-com. "Text me," she said, "before I forget your face." I remember thinking, oh, she's different. Spoiler, she was not. Our first date was 2 days later at a rooftop bar she picked. The kind of place that charged $20 for a drink and made you feel guilty for not knowing the bartender's life story. She showed up late, of course, but when she arrived, she made the entire bar look like it existed just for her entrance. Heads turned. Men adjusted their ties. Women rolled their eyes. And me? I was already halfway to being a cautionary tale. "Sorry," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. Traffic was insane. A protest or something. Against what? I asked. She sipped her martini. Probably bad vibes. I laughed. Again, I didn't know I was auditioning for the role of gullible husband. We talked about our goals. I said I wanted to build generational wealth. She said she wanted to be emotionally fulfilled in a penthouse with good lighting. I thought it was a joke. It wasn't. But she was magnetic. The kind of person who could make you forget logic. I found myself opening up, telling her about my family, my business struggles, even my fear of public speaking. She nodded like she cared, then said, "You'd be great on TV, though. You've got that calm CEO energy." If confidence were flattery, I was overdosing. By the third date, I was done for. She started texting me good morning memes and sending me selfies captioned, "Thinking of you," which I later realized she probably sent to her followers too. She'd call me at night and talk about her dreams, moving to LA, launching her brand, maybe getting into luxury wellness. I didn't even know what that meant, but I kept nodding like a supportive idiot. Then came the question that should have made me run. "So, do you believe in signs?" she asked one evening while we were eating sushi. "Like zodiac signs?" "No," she said. "Like fate. The universe. You and I meeting. It's not random." "Sure," I said. "Maybe the universe just wanted me to overpay for dinner." She giggled, touched my hand, and I swear my brain shut down for a full 3 seconds. She had that power, the kind of manipulative charm that made you think chaos was romance. A month later, we were inseparable. She moved into my apartment temporarily, which, as it turns out, is ex-wife code for permanently. Her stuff started multiplying. First a toothbrush, then a drawer, then half the closet, and eventually my sanity. My friends tried to warn me. Caleb said, "Man, she's bad news." "I can feel it." I laughed. "You're single, Caleb. Everything looks bad when you eat microwave dinners." Even my mother hinted. "She's confident." Maybe too confident, but I was love drunk. I told myself she was misunderstood, ambitious, passionate. What she actually was. Professionally delusional. She had this thing where she'd post pictures of us on Instagram with captions like, "Manifesting love and success with my king." Meanwhile, I was just trying to finish my morning coffee. Her followers ate it up. Hashtag couple goals. Hashtag power love. Hashtag grateful. If I'd known the hashtags would age like spoiled milk, I'd have deactivated my account. Then came the big moment, meeting her parents. They lived in a mansion that screamed, "We inherited this and never let anyone forget it." Her mom was all pearls and Botox. Her dad looked like he hadn't smiled since the Bush administration. Dinner was lobster and judgment. Her dad asked, "So what do you do, Daniel?" "I own a few companies," I said. Sabrina cut in. "He's being modest, Daddy. He's basically a genius." I smiled awkwardly, not realizing that in her family, genius meant walking ATM. By dessert, her mom was already calling me sweetheart, and her dad was giving me investment advice I didn't ask for. As we left, Sabrina whispered, "They adore you." "They adore my income," I said. She laughed. "Same thing, babe." I should have run then. But no, I thought she was joking. That's the problem with dating someone who blurs the line between humor and horror. You can't tell when they mean it. 3 months later, we were talking marriage. She wanted a small wedding, intimate and elegant. Translation: a 200-person event with a drone photographer and a dress that needed its own zip code. When I proposed, she cried. Beautiful, cinematic tears. "You're my dream come true," she whispered. Looking back, I think she meant financial dream. Friends congratulated me. My mom cried happy tears. Caleb just sighed and said, "All right, man, but don't say I didn't warn you." For a while, things were perfect, in the way a fake Gucci bag looks perfect until it rains. She laughed at my jokes, cooked occasionally, by which I mean she ordered takeout, and made me feel like I was the center of her world. But there were cracks, small ones at first. She'd say things like, "You should dress better for meetings. You're representing both of us." Or, "Why don't we go to Monaco this summer? It's so us." Us, I said once. "We've been to Costco more times than anywhere romantic." She laughed. Exactly. Balance. Her charm was intoxicating. But beneath it, there was always this low hum of entitlement. She didn't want a partner. She wanted a platform. And I was the perfect launchpad. Still, I ignored it. Because love, as they say, makes you blind and stupid and financially vulnerable. The night before our wedding, she texted me, "This is the happiest day of my life." I should have replied, "Yeah, mine too for now." But instead, I sent a heart emoji. And just like that, I sealed my fate, not with a kiss, but with a swipe. Because love at first sight might be rare, but love at first swipe? That's just the opening act of a really expensive comedy. Our wedding day looked perfect if you were scrolling through Instagram. Every detail screamed love story. But if you turned the volume up, you'd hear the faint sound of stress, panic, and someone whispering, "Can someone find the florist before Sabrina commits a felony?" The ceremony was held at this lakefront estate she found through an influencer's blog. It had white roses, chandeliers hanging from trees, and a champagne tower that looked like it could feed a small army. Sabrina wanted timeless elegance, which apparently meant hiring a drone to film us walking down the aisle in slow motion. My only job was to show up, smile, and not blink too much for the photos. Sabrina, of course, looked breathtaking. She always did. Her dress was so detailed it probably had its own mortgage. As she walked toward me, all eyes were on her, especially hers, since she subtly angled her face toward the nearest camera. I swear, when the officiant said, "Do you take this man?" she made direct eye contact with the wedding photographer. She cried when I said, "I do." It looked beautiful on camera. I later found out she wasn't crying because of love or emotion. She was crying because her makeup artist forgot waterproof mascara. Half her tears were emotional. The other half were cosmetic disaster. But man, the crowd ate it up. People were dabbing their eyes, whispering, "She's so genuine." If only sincerity could be airbrushed. The honeymoon was her idea. Paris, of course. For the culture, she said. By culture, she meant designer shopping and croissant selfies. I wanted to explore museums and eat local food. She wanted to chase Instagram lighting. Our first argument happened outside the Louvre when I suggested we skip the line. Daniel, she said, clutching her designer purse like it was a fragile pet, we can't skip the Louvre. How else will people know we were in Paris? I said, maybe by the plane tickets? She glared at me like I'd just insulted her ancestors. You don't get it. It's about the experience. The experience of waiting in line for 3 hours? Yes, she said seriously, the vibe. That was when I realized. My wife didn't just live life, she curated it. Every breakfast, every outfit, every photo had to pass the aesthetic check. If the coffee foam wasn't perfect, she'd send it back. If the Eiffel Tower lighting wasn't flattering, we'd try again tomorrow. Our hotel suite looked like something out of a travel ad. She made me film a video where I opened the door and acted surprised by the view. We did 6 takes. You're not reacting naturally enough, she said, adjusting her ring so it caught the sunlight. Sabrina, I said, I'm reacting like a man who just spent $8,000 for a week of unpaid acting. She ignored me. Okay, one more, but this time smile like you actually love me. I blinked. You mean smile like I'm married to you? She sighed. God, you're impossible. When we got back home, our wedding photos broke the internet, or at least her corner of it. The perfect couple, people commented. Fairy tale love. My phone buzzed all day from tags, reposts, and heart emojis. Every time I looked at her, she was glued to her screen, replying to comments like a celebrity thanking fans. At first, I didn't mind. I figured it made her happy, and happy wife equals peaceful life. But slowly, it started to feel like our relationship wasn't real unless strangers approved of it. One night, we were eating takeout sushi on the couch, just relaxing, when she looked at me and said, we should post a date night picture. I glanced around. The room was dim, there were soy sauce stains on the table, and I was wearing pajama pants. Why? I asked. We're literally living the moment. She gasped. That's not the point, Daniel. It's not about living the moment. It's about sharing it. You know cavemen never shared their moments, and they survived, right? She rolled her eyes. You're so old-fashioned. Thanks, I said. I'll add that to my list of compliments from people who've never been off Wi-Fi. Then she dropped the question. Why don't we merge our bank accounts? It's more romantic. That sentence hit me harder than espresso on an empty stomach. I blinked. Romantic? Of course, she said. What's mine is yours, and what's yours is ours. I smiled. So mathematically, what's mine is still yours. She laughed, the kind of laugh that sounds cute until you realize it's rehearsed. Don't overthink it, babe. You trust me, right? I did trust her, or at least I wanted to. That's the thing about people like Sabrina. They sell sincerity like perfume. It smells good until you realize it's all alcohol underneath. A few weeks later, she started pushing the influencer angle harder. People love us, Daniel. We could totally be a brand. A brand. I repeated, mid-bite of my cereal. Yes, she said. Like the hearts. Our life, our style, our story. Our story. Exactly. Couples like us make 6 figures just for showing how happy they are. We already are happy. Why not monetize it? I choked on my cereal. You want to turn our marriage into a sponsorship deal? She smiled sweetly. It's not selling out. It's storytelling. Yeah, I muttered, until we need to stage an argument for engagement. She gave me that warning look, the one that meant, smile for the camera, or I'll emotionally bankrupt you. So I played along. I appeared in her videos, held her hand at brunch, smiled at strangers commenting #goals. It wasn't love anymore, it was performance art. My buddies noticed the change. Caleb said, dude, every time I see your face online, you look like a hostage blinking in Morse code. I laughed it off. It's fine, man. Happy wife, happy life. He smirked. Yeah, well, unhappy bank account, unhappy future. He wasn't wrong. Sabrina's definition of love language was spending money in mine. She called it investing in us. When she wanted a $4,000 handbag, it was symbolic of commitment. When she wanted a new car, it was an emotional necessity. Meanwhile, I started feeling like a background character in my own life. Every day was about what looked perfect, not what felt right. We didn't have conversations. We had content planning meetings. Once, during a dinner with friends, I tried to bring up something serious about work stress. Before I could finish, she cut me off with a bright smile. Don't worry about him, guys. He's just dramatic when Mercury's in retrograde. Everyone laughed. I smiled too, but inside I was shrinking. It's a strange thing, to be adored publicly and ignored privately. By year one, the highlight reel had cracks. Behind the scenes, our fights were becoming regular episodes. You're never present, she'd accuse. I'm literally here. I'd argue. Physically, yes, she said. But emotionally, you're not reacting to my captions anymore. I blinked. Captions? Exactly, she said, like she'd made an airtight point. Her followers started noticing too. You guys don't post as much, they commented. Are you okay? We weren't. But the show had to go on. Then came the moment that sealed it for me. One afternoon, I came home early from work and found her in the living room, surrounded by ring lights, posing in a silk robe. She looked gorgeous, sure, but she was fake crying into a wine glass. Sabrina? I asked. Everything okay? She jumped. Daniel, you're not supposed to be here yet. What's going on? She sniffed dramatically. It's for a post. Coping with heartbreak and healing through self-love. Heartbreak. I repeated. We literally just had lunch together. She shrugged. It's called engagement, Daniel. I stared at her, realizing the truth. My marriage wasn't a partnership. It was a marketing campaign. That night, as I lay in bed next to her scrolling through her newest, raw, emotional post, I noticed one comment that summed it up perfectly. Wow, someone wrote. You're living every woman's dream. And there it was, the cruel irony. To the world, she was a dream. To me, she was an endless subscription I couldn't cancel. But I smiled anyway, because back then, I still believed maybe she'd change. Maybe we'd find something real behind the filters. I didn't know yet that the only thing real about our marriage was the debt that came with it. Marriage teaches you a lot of things. Patience, compromise, the exact point when love turns into math. You know, when you start counting credit card charges and wondering if forever was supposed to come with monthly interest. It started on a Tuesday. Funny how disasters love Tuesdays, just boring enough that your guard is down. I was sipping my coffee, scrolling through emails, and feeling almost human when I saw it. A fraud alert notification from my bank. My heart stopped for 2 seconds. Fraud. Had someone hacked my account? Then I read the details. The transactions weren't from Russia or some shady crypto exchange. No, they were from a place called Revive Wellness Spa, the Silk Edit, and my personal favorite, Soul Retreat Dubai. Combined total, $89,672.49. I stared at the screen like it was written in hieroglyphics. There has to be a mistake, I whispered. The universe, somewhere, laughed. Sabrina walked into the kitchen just then, humming, wearing her silk robe like she was starring in a commercial for Delusion. She kissed me on the cheek. Morning, babe. You look tense. Oh, I'm fine, I said. Just looking at some light reading, bank statements. She froze for half a second, then smiled like a professional liar. Oh, those. I meant to tell you. I've been investing in myself. I blinked. Investing? Yeah, she said cheerfully, pouring almond milk into her coffee. Mental health. Skincare. Self-care retreats. You always say I deserve the best. Right? I said slowly. But I meant food that isn't photographed and maybe a gym membership, not a financial crime spree. She sighed dramatically, like I'd just insulted art. Daniel, you just don't understand me. Oh, I understand plenty. What I don't understand is how you managed to accidentally spend $90,000 in 3 months. She waved a manicured hand. You're being dramatic. It's not like I bought a car. Technically, you bought 3 cars worth of spa treatments. Her expression hardened. I needed it. You have no idea how stressful it is maintaining our image. Our image. I repeated. You mean your Instagram highlight reel? She crossed her arms. That's not fair. I leaned back, trying to keep my voice calm. Fair? Sabrina, when I met you, you said you wanted to build a future, not finance a skincare empire. She scoffed. You make good money. What's the big deal? The big deal, I said, is that you spent almost 6 figures without telling me. That's not a marriage. That's embezzlement with wedding photos. She rolled her eyes. You're overreacting. I'll pay you back when my skincare line takes off. I actually laughed. Out loud. Your skincare line? The one with no products, no customers, and no business license. She glared. You're so negative. No, I'm realistic. There's a difference. She huffed and stormed off, slamming the bedroom door like punctuation. I sat there staring at my coffee, wondering if it was too early to replace it with whiskey. Later that night, I found her sitting cross-legged on the bed, surrounded by receipts and a color-coded vision board. At the top, in gold marker, she'd written, Sabrina Heart Beauty, a brand for women who deserve more. More what? I had no clue. She looked up, eyes wide like a child explaining why the house was on fire. See, I've been manifesting abundance, she said. I'm going to turn my platform into a movement. I rubbed my temples. Sabrina, your platform is built on my Amex. She ignored that. Once my followers see how confident and empowered I am, they'll want to buy the products I use. It's simple marketing. Except you don't sell anything. Not yet, she said brightly. That's why I needed the retreat, to realign my energy. Ah yes, I muttered. Because you can't launch a business without realigning in Dubai. She smiled, thinking I was supportive. I wasn't. Over the next few days, I tried to cool off. I told myself she was just impulsive, that she'd learn. Love makes you delusional. It convinces you that red flags are just passion. But then the credit card bills started rolling in like horror movie sequels. Revive Wellness, $12,000. Luxderm, $7,800. Vogue Spirit Academy, $5,400. Vogue Spirit Academy. What even was that? An Ivy League for narcissists. By week 2, I'd gone from disbelief to quiet fury. I stopped arguing and started planning. My lawyer, Daniela Cruz, was a friend from college, sharp, calm, the kind of woman who could dismantle a person's ego with a smile. I called her. Daniel, she said after hearing the story, she's not just careless. She's strategic. I frowned. Strategic? She can't even spell receipt right. That's the act, Daniela said. She's testing boundaries. Once you tolerate one financial mess, she'll push for more. Watch her next move. And just like that, the next move came. A few nights later, Sabrina slid into bed beside me with that fake soft voice she used when she wanted something. Babe, she whispered, you've been so tense lately. I think you need to relax. I'd relax if my money stopped disappearing, I said. She chuckled. Oh, come on. You're making it sound worse than it is. Sabrina, we're one transaction away from bankruptcy. She ignored that, twirling a strand of hair. I was thinking, what if we start a joint account? You know, to make budgeting easier. Easier for who? For both of us, she said, smiling. You're always so busy with work. Let me handle the day-to-day stuff. Bills, shopping, spa appointments. Did you just list spa appointments as day-to-day stuff? She smiled wider. Self-care is survival, Daniel. I took a deep breath, channeling every ounce of patience left in my bloodstream. Sabrina, if we merge accounts, we'll be self-caring ourselves into foreclosure. She pouted. You don't trust me. I'd love to, I said, but I just watched you financially colonize my credit limit. Her lips tightened. You're being cruel. No, I said quietly. I'm being awake. She stormed out again, slamming the door for dramatic effect. I swear, she treated doors like emotional punctuation marks. 2 days later, she posted a photo of herself on Instagram wearing a $4,000 robe, captioned, Healing my energy. Some people just don't get it. She was right. I didn't get it. By that point, I started documenting everything, screenshots, receipts, messages. I wasn't planning revenge, not yet, but I was preparing for self-defense. Because if Sabrina had one consistent habit, it was turning her mistakes into my fault. Sure enough, a week later, she sat me down with her serious voice. I think we need therapy. Therapy? I asked. Yes, she said solemnly. You've been so cold lately. You're projecting your stress onto me. My stress. I repeated. You're the one treating my bank account like monopoly money. She frowned. You always make it about money. It is about money. No, Daniel, it's about love. You've changed. I laughed loudly. Yeah, love will do that when it comes with an itemized bill. She sniffled. I just feel like you don't appreciate what I do for us. Enlighten me, I said. What exactly do you do for us? She straightened. I maintain our image. I make people admire us. That's valuable. I rubbed my forehead. I'm sure the mortgage company will accept admiration as payment. Her eyes welled up, which used to work on me. Not this time. You're cruel, she whispered again. standing up dramatically. You'll regret treating me like this. Oh, I already do, I muttered. She gasped. You're not funny. Neither is $90,000 in debt. She stomped off again. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the living room, lights low, calculator in hand, staring at the reality of what love had cost me, literally. 90 grand gone. For candles, creams, and retreats. And yet, a strange calm settled over me. Not despair, resolve. I realized that Sabrina's chaos thrived on reaction. She wanted me to yell, panic, lose control. But silence scared her more. So I went quiet. I stopped engaging in arguments. I smiled politely, kept track of everything, and waited. Because the thing about people like her, they always overplay their hand. And when they do, well, I was already building the trap. You know that feeling when something's off, but you can't quite explain it yet? Like when your favorite burger joint suddenly changes the sauce, and you keep eating it thinking, nah, maybe it's just me. That was my marriage at this point. Off, but not yet rotten enough to smell. It started one morning when I caught Sabrina in my home office. Now, let me be clear, she had no business being in there. The office was sacred ground, the only space in the house that didn't smell like lavender candles or expensive regrets. I walked in quietly, coffee in hand, and there she was, hunched over my desk, rifling through folders like a raccoon in a recycling bin. Looking for your conscience? I asked, leaning on the doorframe. She froze mid-flip, the world's worst spy caught in 4K. Then she turned around, plastering on her best innocent face. Oh, I was just organizing your paperwork. By throwing it on the floor? She forced a laugh. You're so funny. Thanks. Now tell me what you're really doing before I start assuming you joined Ocean's 11. Her eyes darted toward the printer, then back to me. I was just printing something. For my skincare business. Ah, yes, I said, sipping my coffee. The one that hasn't legally existed since it was born? She glared at me, snatched a random paper off the desk, and stormed past me in a huff. But before she could leave, I noticed something. My property portfolio file was missing. That's when my internal alarm went from mild irritation to full DEFCON 1. That night, my phone buzzed. It was my lawyer, Daniela Cruz, the human embodiment of I told you so. Daniel, she said, her voice calm but sharp enough to cut through nonsense. Your wife's been asking around about marital property laws. I froze. She what? Apparently, she called my assistant pretending to be one of my clients. Asked if joint property applies to business assets. I groaned. You've got to be kidding me. Nope. I'm sending you a list of what to lock down immediately. Assets, accounts, contracts, the whole 9 yards. Appreciate it, Danny. She paused. And Daniel? Yeah. Don't confront her yet. Let her think she's smart. The more she believes she's in control, the easier it'll be to prove she's not. I chuckled. Got it. So I'm supposed to play dumb. You've had practice, she teased, then hung up. Touché. That night, I sat on the couch pretending to watch Netflix while my brain did Olympic-level math about how far Sabrina might go. The woman once cried over a broken nail like it was a national tragedy. Now she was apparently auditioning for a true crime documentary. A few days later, I started noticing her behavior shift. She was being nice. Too nice. Breakfast in bed, random compliments. That fake laugh she used when she wanted to soften me up. You've been working so hard, babe, she cooed. You deserve a break. Oh, really? I asked. What's the catch? She giggled. Can't a wife just spoil her husband? Not when the last thing you spoiled was my credit score. She rolled her eyes and went back to making avocado toast like she was auditioning for a cooking show. I had to hand it to her, though. She was good at pretending. Later that week, I walked into the living room and found her on a video call. She didn't see me at first. Yes, I understand, she was saying into her phone. He won't suspect a thing. I froze mid-step. Once I have the documents, she continued, we'll proceed with the transfer. Transfer? I coughed loudly. She jumped like she'd been electrocuted, spinning around to face me. Oh, I was just talking to a friend. Uh-huh. About what exactly? She fumbled. A charity thing. Which charity? The Save My Bank Account Foundation. She laughed too fast. You're such a comedian. I didn't respond. I just smiled, sat down, and kept my eyes on her. She squirmed like a cat on a hot stove. Within seconds, she muttered something about fresh air and bolted out of the room. That night, I called Daniela again. She's plotting something, I said. Something big. I figured, Daniela replied. I've already looped in Detective Mark Alvarez. He owes me a favor. Alvarez was an old friend of hers, a grizzled, sarcastic guy who looked like he'd seen every brand of human stupidity twice. 2 days later, Alvarez showed up at my house in a leather jacket and a smirk. So this is the infamous Mrs. Hart, he said, glancing at the framed wedding photo on the wall. She's got that I shop with other people's money sparkle in her eyes. Yeah, I said. It's her best feature. He chuckled, pulling out a notepad. All right, here's what we're gonna do. You act normal. I'll do some digging. If she's planning something, we'll catch her in the act. Catch her? He nodded. You'd be surprised how many people incriminate themselves trying to be clever. I smirked. Oh, trust me. I live with the queen of overconfidence. For the next week, I played my part perfectly. Smiled. Nodded. Laughed at her fake jokes. It was like living in a play where both actors knew the other was lying but kept performing anyway. Sabrina got bolder. One night, I saw her sneaking into my office again. I followed quietly, leaning in the doorway as she fiddled with the safe. Need help? I asked. She jumped, hiding a folder behind her back. I was cleaning. At midnight. I couldn't sleep. Yeah, neither can my bank accounts lately. Her lips tightened. You're paranoid. No, I said calmly. I'm married. She glared at me and stormed out, again. At this point, the doors in our house were suffering more trauma than both of us combined. The next morning, Alvarez called. Got something. She's been in contact with a family lawyer, someone who specializes in asset reallocation. Meaning, she's trying to figure out how to claim ownership of your company assets. Probably banking on you being dumb enough not to notice. I laughed bitterly. She really thinks I'd let her touch my company? Hey, he said, narcissists believe in two things: their own brilliance and your stupidity. Accurate. So we set the trap. I started leaving fake documents in my office, dummy contracts, fake bank statements, even a secret investment account labeled joint property transfer. I made sure they looked real enough to tempt her, but harmless enough not to backfire. Within days, she took the bait. I walked in one evening to find her grinning like a cat that found the cream. What's that? I asked casually. Oh, nothing, she said, tucking the folder under her arm. Just organizing things. Uh-huh. That night, I called Alvarez. She took it. He chuckled. Perfect. Let's see where she runs with it. The next day, while I was at work, Alvarez tailed her. He sent me a photo that made my stomach twist. Sabrina sitting across from her lawyer at a cafe, holding my fake documents. She's planning to file soon, Alvarez texted. Says she's got proof you agreed to joint ownership. I couldn't help but laugh. The woman who once Googled how to boil water was suddenly a legal mastermind. That night, when she came home, I played it cool. Hey babe, I said, smiling. How was your day? Oh, just errands, she said, smiling too brightly. Productive? The most. Good, I said. I love when you're motivated. She blinked, surprised by how calm I was. You're not mad. Mad? No. You said you're investing in us, right? Who am I to stop love from being productive? Her smile faltered just enough to make my day. Over the next week, I let her build her little empire of lies. She made copies, called advisors, and probably fantasized about buying a villa with my money. Meanwhile, I had every call recorded, every email forwarded, and every document timestamped by Alvarez's team. It was like watching a car drive toward a cliff while the driver yelled, I know what I'm doing. By the time Daniela finished compiling the evidence, it was bulletproof. She's done, Daniela said, handing me a sealed folder. All we need is for her to try submitting it. I smiled. Oh, she will. She can't resist an audience. And right on schedule, 2 days later, Sabrina strutted into court for the preliminary hearing, smiling, confident, and blissfully unaware that the pen she used to forge my signature was about to destroy her. There are moments in life when you realize the person you married isn't just dramatic. They're potentially auditioning for a true crime documentary. For me, that realization came on a Thursday morning, 9:42 a.m., when my wife waltzed into the living room, holding a stack of papers thicker than her moral compass. She was humming, smiling, wearing one of those smug little looks that said, I just solved world peace, but actually meant, I'm about to do something incredibly stupid. Sweetheart, she began, sliding the folder onto the coffee table. We need to talk business. That sentence alone should have come with a government warning. I looked up from my laptop. Business? As in your skincare empire that exists entirely on Canva. She ignored the jab, perched on the couch like she was negotiating a merger. You remember signing this, she said, sliding a set of documents toward me. I frowned. You're going to have to narrow it down. I've signed a lot of things in this marriage. Receipts, apologies, emotional waivers. She gave a rehearsed laugh, then tapped the paper dramatically. This one, our business partnership agreement. You signed it 6 months ago. I blinked. Partnership agreement? Yes, she said. Remember? You wanted to help fund my company, so you agreed to be a 50% shareholder. Interesting, I said slowly. Because 6 months ago, you were in Cabo realigning your chakras, and I was in Chicago paying for said chakras. Her smile flickered. You must have forgotten. We did it over dinner. You had wine. Oh, well in that case, I said, setting my coffee down. I'm sure I signed it right after I knighted you Queen of Narnia. Her face tightened. You're not taking this seriously. Oh, I'm taking it very seriously, I said, flipping through the pages. Because unless I've developed blackout-level memory loss, this, I pointed at my signature, isn't mine. She crossed her arms. You're accusing me of forging your name? I smiled thinly. No, I'm complimenting your calligraphy. For a second, she didn't say anything. Then she leaned back, smirking like she'd just outsmarted a toddler. Well, let's see what the judge thinks. Oh, there it was, the line that said she'd already planned the whole performance. I studied her for a moment, marveling at how calm she was. The woman could barely fry an egg without calling her mom, but here she was ready to challenge me in legal combat. All right, I said, standing. Let's play this out. Hypothetically, if I didn't sign this, and I didn't, how exactly do you plan to prove I did? Her smirk widened. You'll see. And with that, she sashayed out of the room like a Bond villain in heels. The moment she left, I called Detective Mark Alvarez. Mark, I said, you ever met someone so dumb they loop back around to impressive? He chuckled. What did she do now? She forged my signature on a business agreement. He whistled. Bold move. You sure it's fake? I'm positive. The loops on the D are wrong, and the pen pressure looks like it was signed by a caffeinated squirrel. He laughed again. All right, send me a copy. I'll have our forensic doc analyst take a look. Enter Maya Green, the queen of details and owner of more microscopes than friends. Maya had this eerie ability to tell what brand of pen someone used based on ink density. She was basically CSI for office supplies. Within a week, I had results that made me question whether Sabrina had ever even seen a real pen. Maya called me herself, voice gleeful. Mr. Hart, you're gonna love this. The signature's fake. Shocking, I deadpanned. How'd you tell? Well, she said. For starters, the pen used in the document wasn't even manufactured until 3 months after the date listed on the signature line. I blinked. You're saying she forged my name with a pen from the future? Exactly, she said cheerfully. Also, the pressure and stroke pattern match a female writer with smaller hand dynamics. Probably your wife. I couldn't help but laugh. She forged my name badly? Oh, terribly. Amateur hour. I thanked her, hung up, and called Mark. We've got her. Perfect, he said. Now the fun part, don't tell her. So I didn't. I acted normal. Happier than normal, even. Every time she pranced around the house rehearsing lines for whatever courtroom drama she thought she was starring in, I smiled like an idiot. Big week coming up, she said one morning. Make sure you clear your schedule. The lawyer's filing the paperwork. Oh, I'll be there, I said cheerfully. Front row. She winked. You'll thank me later. Oh, I was already thanking her in my head for providing free entertainment. That night, I met with Daniela and Mark to plan the reveal. We were in Daniela's office downtown, the kind of place with books you know no one's actually read, but they look intimidating. So, Daniela said, flipping through the file, we present the forensic report in court. Once the judge sees that the pen didn't exist at the time, she's toast. Mark grinned. You want me in the back for dramatic effect? Absolutely, I said. Bring popcorn. Daniela chuckled. You know, most people panic during divorce proceedings. Yeah, well, most people's wives don't hand them their own victory wrapped in forged paperwork. The next morning, Sabrina strutted through the house humming Beyoncé like she was the underdog hero of a movie only she was watching. She even practiced her surprised but brave face in the mirror. I watched from the hallway, sipping my coffee. You know, I said, for someone preparing for a legal battle, you're awfully calm. She turned, eyes gleaming. Confidence, darling. You should try it sometime. Oh, I have, I said. Usually right before karma clocks in. She didn't get the joke. She never did. The day before the hearing, she dropped one last bomb. You should know, she said casually over dinner. My lawyer says you don't stand a chance. Once the partnership is validated, half your company's assets are mine. I stabbed my steak a little too hard. Half, huh? Bull. She smirked. You built your empire with my support. My support? You mean emotional support or retail therapy support? She waved her fork dismissively. You're deflecting. From what? The fact that your legal strategy was written by a toddler with crayons. She sighed dramatically, taking another sip of wine. You'll see. The truth always comes out. You're absolutely right, I said, raising my glass. Cheers to that. The next morning, I dressed like I was going to brunch, not court, blue suit, calm smile, inner peace borrowed from pure pettiness. When we arrived, she strutted into the courthouse like she was on a red carpet, waving at imaginary cameras. Her lawyer, the same overly slick guy from earlier, grinned at her like they were about to win an Oscar. I took my seat beside Daniela. She leaned over and whispered, You ready? Born ready, I said. The judge entered, same one as before, Judge Wong, whose tolerance for nonsense had already been tested by Sabrina once. She adjusted her glasses and sighed like she'd just remembered she'd seen this couple before. Mrs. Hart, the judge began. You claim Mr. Hart entered a partnership agreement transferring 50% ownership of his company to you. Is that correct? Sabrina stood, poised and dramatic. Yes, Your Honor. He signed it willingly. The judge nodded. And Mr. Hart, you dispute this? Yes, Your Honor, I said calmly. Because I didn't sign it. But I brought proof. Sabrina smirked. Proof? What proof could you possibly? Your Honor, Daniela interrupted smoothly, handing over the folder. Forensic report from document analyst Maya Green. Judge Wong flipped through the report, squinting. Then she blinked. Then she laughed. Actually laughed. The courtroom fell silent. Sabrina looked confused. Is something funny? Judge Wong cleared her throat, barely suppressing a grin. Mrs. Hart, this report indicates that the pen used to sign this document wasn't manufactured until 3 months after the alleged date of signing. The crowd murmured. Sabrina's face turned the color of a canceled credit card. That's impossible. Daniela smiled sweetly. Oh, it's possible. Just not legal. The judge couldn't hold it anymore. She chuckled outright. I've seen my fair share of creative fraud, but this is truly ambitious. The courtroom erupted in laughter. Even the bailiff cracked a grin. Sabrina's lawyer whispered something frantically in her ear, probably, run. She glared at me, eyes blazing. You set me up. I smiled. You set yourself up. I just took notes. The judge raised her gavel. Enough. Mrs. Hart, forging your spouse's signature on a legal document is a serious offense. I suggest you speak with your attorney, preferably one who doesn't approve time travel pens. I swear, even the stenographer snorted. As we exited, Mark was leaning against the wall outside, arms crossed, smirk firmly in place. Well, he said. Guess the forgery queen just abdicated the throne. Long live the petty king, I replied. Sabrina stormed past, muttering curses under her breath. Her lawyer trailed behind like a man reconsidering every life choice he'd ever made. Daniela handed me a fresh copy of the report. Keep this, she said. Frame it if you want. Oh, I plan to, I said. Right next to the marriage certificate, so I can see both sides of her handwriting. Patience. People talk about it like it's some kind of peaceful virtue. For me, it was a full-time job. After the forgery fiasco, you'd think Sabrina would have gone into hiding, maybe joined a silent retreat, or at least a book club for the criminally delusional. But no, she doubled down. She started walking around the house like she was the misunderstood heroine in a movie where the audience was supposed to root for her redemption arc. Spoiler. There was no redemption arc coming. Detective Alvarez called it first. Let her think she's winning. He told me over coffee one morning. Narcissists love an audience. If she thinks the crowd's still cheering, she'll keep performing. He wasn't wrong. Sabrina strutted around like she was auditioning for the Real Housewives of Regret. She wore silk robes in the middle of the day, hummed show tunes while rearranging furniture that didn't need rearranging, and practiced her innocent smile in the mirror like she was training for a beauty pageant sponsored by Denial. One night, I caught her pacing in the hallway, phone in hand, whispering to someone. "He still thinks I don't know what I'm doing," she said. "Just wait." I stayed in the shadows, sipping my water, and whispered back to myself, "Oh, I'm waiting." Because that's what Operation Patience was, not revenge, not anger. It was waiting. Quiet, calculated waiting. The kind that makes the other person nervous because they can't tell whether you're planning a counterattack or a vacation. To sell the illusion, I played nice. I smiled. I cooked dinner. I even complimented her outfits again. "You look great, babe," I'd say, while she stood there wondering if I was being sarcastic. I was. She'd tilt her head, suspicious. "You're being sweet. Just trying to match your energy," I'd reply. That usually ended the conversation. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, I was doing the real work. Daniela, my lawyer, had set up a secure file for all our documentation. Forged signatures, fake transactions, screenshots, you name it. Alvarez was running background checks on anyone she contacted. The man was relentless. "She's poking around again," he texted one night. "Talking to some random consultant about financial loopholes." "Consultant?" I replied. "You mean her new scam buddy?" He sent a laughing emoji. "Let her cook." And so I did. I let her cook. Figuratively, of course. She couldn't actually cook to save her life. Her last attempt at pasta had ended with me Googling how to remove burnt tomato sauce from ceiling paint. Days turned into weeks. Sabrina grew more confident and careless. She'd leave receipts lying around from expensive lunches, start talking about new business ventures, and drop subtle hints like, "You'll regret underestimating me." I'd nod, smile, and say, "Probably." Inside, though, I was taking notes. Every lie, every half-truth, every unnecessary shopping spree. Patience wasn't just about waiting for her to fall. It was about giving her the rope to tie her own knot. One morning, she pranced into the kitchen in yoga pants and a blazer, her power outfit, as she called it. "I've decided to get my own lawyer," she announced, pouring herself a green smoothie that looked like blended envy. "Great idea," I said. "Make sure they're good with magic pens." She glared. "You're mocking me." "Only a little," I said. "I mean, it's hard not to when your last legal move got laughed out of court." She huffed, grabbed her purse, and stormed out. The doors slammed so hard, one of the picture frames fell off the wall. Alvarez called 10 minutes later. "She's meeting someone downtown. Looks like another lawyer. Want me to tail her?" "Please do," I said. "And make sure she sees you at least once." He laughed. "You're evil." "Efficient," I corrected. That evening, she came home furious. "Were you spying on me?" I feigned confusion. "What? Why would I do that?" "Don't play dumb. I saw that detective friend of yours at the cafe." I gasped dramatically. "You mean the public cafe that serves terrible espresso?" "Yeah, that's definitely my secret surveillance spot." She narrowed her eyes. "You're mocking me again." I smiled. "And you keep making it so easy." She stomped off, muttering something about revenge arcs and karma. I let her go. Because the thing about Sabrina was that she couldn't stand still. She needed chaos to feel alive, attention to feel validated. So I gave her the illusion of both, the chaos of waiting and the spotlight of my silence. By week 3, she was unraveling. Her once perfect morning routines turned sloppy. The Instagram captions got passive-aggressive. "Some people think silence is power," she wrote one day. "But sometimes silence just means guilt." I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. I showed it to Daniela. "She's cracking," Daniela said, smirking. "Keep it up. The calmer you stay, the more she'll lose it." "Good," I said. "I've got enough screenshots for a Netflix miniseries already." Then, like clockwork, she tried to provoke me again. It was a Saturday morning. I was on the porch, reading, when she walked out with 2 suitcases. "I'm going to stay at a hotel," she announced. "I need space." "Perfect," I said without looking up. "Hotels have great Wi-Fi for your next scheme." She blinked. "You're not even going to ask why." "Oh, I know why," I said, turning a page. "You need an audience that claps when you play victim." Her jaw dropped. "You're such an ass." "Maybe," I said, "but I'm an ass with good credit." She stood there, seething, waiting for me to explode. I didn't. That silence hit her harder than any argument ever could. Finally, she stomped off, dragging her luggage dramatically down the steps. The moment her car left the driveway, I texted Alvarez. "She's gone." "Good," he replied. "Let's see where she ends up." Turns out, she checked into a fancy downtown hotel using my secondary credit card. Classic Sabrina, stealing with style. But what she didn't realize was that Alvarez already had alerts on all my accounts. Every transaction pinged us like a bell announcing her next dumb move. 3 days later, he called. "You're gonna love this. She's meeting a guy named Vincent, her so-called business consultant." Guess what he actually is? I'm afraid to ask. An ex-con. Fraud charges. Served time for forging documents. I laughed. She really has a type. Alvarez snorted. "Don't worry, we're documenting everything." Between him and her, this case is gift-wrapped. By now, Operation Patience had turned into Operation Enjoy the Show. I'd go to work, handle my company meetings, and then come home to check the Sabrina updates from Alvarez. Every report read like a soap opera script. Subject: met with Vincent. Ordered wine. Tried to flirt her way into a business deal. At one point, Alvarez even sent me a blurry photo of her whispering across a table. "Caption this," he texted. I replied, "When your get-rich-quick plan involves someone who still lives with their parole officer." Even Daniela started getting entertained. "You're way too calm for a man in the middle of a divorce," she said during one meeting. "I'm not divorcing a wife," I told her. "I'm dismantling a scam." By the end of the month, the pattern was clear. Sabrina was gearing up for something bigger. Maybe another forged document, maybe a lawsuit, maybe an exclusive interview about her abusive ex-husband. She'd always loved rewriting history. That's when Daniela suggested we push things along. "Let's file the final paperwork," she said. "We have everything we need. She'll never see it coming." So we did. When the summons arrived at her hotel, Alvarez told me she looked like someone had unplugged her brain. She called me 12 times in an hour, left 6 voicemails ranging from fake sadness to pure rage. "Daniel," one of them began in her overly practiced, hurt voice, "I can't believe you'd betray me like this after everything I've done for us." After everything she'd done, I thought, scrolling through the charges she'd made just that morning: spa, boutique, champagne bar. The final voicemail was my favorite. "You'll regret this, Daniel. You can't just embarrass me like this. I always come out on top." I played that message on speaker while pouring myself a drink. "Sure, sweetheart," I said to no one. But even the best actors get written out of bad shows. The next morning, I met Alvarez and Daniela at a cafe to finalize the court strategy. Alvarez slid me a folder filled with photos, receipts, and transcribed calls. "Everything's ready," he said. "She thinks you're still clueless. She's bragging to Vincent that she's got one more move left." Daniela grinned. "Perfect. Let her bring it to court." I leaned back, sipping my espresso. "You know," I said, "people always talk about revenge being sweet. But honestly, patience tastes better." Alvarez laughed. "Yeah? What's it taste like?" "Like peace," I said, with a side of poetic justice. He raised his cup. "To Operation Patience." I clinked my glass. "And to the downfall of the forgery queen." Because in a few days, she'd learn what real patience looked like, the kind that waits quietly while karma catches up. And this time, I'd be front row, watching her empire of lies crumble in high definition. If there's one thing Sabrina loved more than money, it was an audience. So when her next court hearing came up, she didn't treat it like a legal proceeding. She treated it like the Met Gala of victimhood. I woke up that morning to find her in the living room, rehearsing lines in front of the mirror. No exaggeration, she had no cards. "Your Honor," she said dramatically, clutching her chest, "I've been through emotional devastation at the hands of a cold, manipulative man." She looked at her reflection, frowned, and shook her head. No, that sounds too strong. Make it softer. Like I'm crying but still hot." I leaned against the doorway with my coffee. Maybe add a slow blink and a fake sniffle for authenticity. She jumped. "Jesus, Daniel. Don't sneak up on people like that." "Sorry," I said deadpan. "Didn't mean to interrupt your Broadway debut." She rolled her eyes and started packing her designer handbag, which, I should note, was probably worth more than the car she drove in with. "You can mock me all you want," she said. "But when this is over, I'll finally get what I deserve." "Oh, I don't doubt that," I said. We drove to the courthouse in separate cars. Hers a luxury sedan she still somehow hadn't paid off. Mine the practical kind that doesn't need attention to feel validated. When I arrived, the parking lot was already buzzing. Reporters, onlookers, even a few randoms who clearly just came for the drama. Inside, the courtroom was packed. You'd think we were shooting a reality show. The bailiff had to tell people to quiet down twice. Sabrina entered 5 minutes late, on purpose, of course. She wanted the room's attention, and she got it. Her lawyer followed behind her carrying an overstuffed briefcase that was probably just filled with bad arguments and perfume samples. She looked immaculate, hair curled, makeup flawless, white suit tailored to perfection. The innocent angel look. I almost applauded her commitment to the role. If lying were an Olympic sport, she'd be holding gold medals in both singles and doubles. As she sat down, she glanced my way, smirking like she'd already won. Her lawyer patted her hand, whispering something about staying calm. Across the aisle, my own lawyer, Daniela, looked perfectly composed. Cool, collected, and probably already 3 steps ahead of Sabrina's little performance. When the judge entered, the same Judge Wong who had already endured 1 round of Sabrina's theatrics, the room fell silent. The woman looked exhausted, like she'd already aged a decade from our last case. "Let's keep this brief," she said, adjusting her glasses. "Mrs. Hart, you have the floor." And that's when it began. Sabrina stood up, cleared her throat, and launched into what I can only describe as a one-woman tragedy. "Your Honor," she began, her voice trembling just enough to sound rehearsed. "I have suffered immensely. My husband, Daniel, has emotionally abandoned me, withheld financial support, and tried to tarnish my reputation." The audience murmured. Someone gasped. I'm pretty sure one lady in the back whispered, "Oh, poor thing," before immediately checking her phone. I sat perfectly still, sipping water like this was a matinee I'd already seen twice. Sabrina continued, pacing the courtroom like a motivational speaker who'd just lost her audience. "I gave everything to this marriage. My time, my love, my emotional labor. I wanted to raise my hand and ask, does emotional labor include charging spa trips to my credit card? But I restrained myself. Patience, Daniel. Patience." Then came the line that made me almost spit out my drink. "Your Honor, I only wish to live off what I rightfully earned, his fortune." The courtroom went silent. She realized what she'd just said too late. You could see the panic flash across her face like a glitch in the Matrix. Her lawyer's head dropped into his hands. Somewhere behind me, someone snorted. Even Judge Wong blinked. "You want to live off his fortune?" Sabrina stammered. "I mean, our fortune. The fortune we built together." I turned to Daniela and whispered, "Built together?" She once asked me how to turn on the printer. Sabrina's lawyer jumped in, desperate to save her. "What my client means, Your Honor, is that she contributed in non-financial ways, emotional support, companionship." Loud sighs during budget meetings, I muttered under my breath. The judge shot me a warning glance. I smiled politely. Her lawyer soldiered on. "Mrs. Hart was the emotional foundation of this marriage." Judge Wong looked skeptical. "I recall her previous case involved forged documents, correct?" Sabrina's smile twitched. "That was a misunderstanding." The judge nodded slowly. "I see." At that point, the entire room felt like it was holding back laughter. Even the stenographer's typing slowed down, probably because she didn't want to miss a word. Then came my turn. Daniela stood gracefully, walking to the center of the room. "Your Honor, my client will not make a speech today. We believe Mrs. Hart's statements, and her own previous court history, speak for themselves." Sabrina rolled her eyes. "Of course he won't speak. He never does. He hides behind his lawyer." I raised an eyebrow. "Well, I did try talking once, but apparently my signature wasn't convincing enough." The audience chuckled. The bailiff banged his gavel for order, but even he was smirking. Daniela handed the judge a folder. "However, for clarity, this is a full record of Mrs. Hart's recent spending and communications, including messages with a known ex-convict named Vincent, who advised her on how to transfer assets quietly." Sabrina's eyes widened. "That's private." "Actually," Daniela said sweetly, "it's evidence." The judge flipped through the papers, her expression growing more and more incredulous. "Mrs. Hart, you were in contact with this individual?" Sabrina fumbled. "He's a consultant." "A consultant who was arrested for wire fraud," Daniela added. The audience gasped again. Someone whispered, This is better than Netflix. Sabrina looked around, realizing her carefully curated image was slipping. This is harassment, she cried. Judge Wong sighed. Mrs. Hart, please sit down before you embarrass yourself further. That was it. The audience couldn't hold it anymore. Soft laughter rippled through the room like a wave. Sabrina sat, fuming, her face an entire shade chart of rage. She glanced at me like she could set me on fire with her mind. I smiled back, serene as ever. The rest of the hearing went exactly as expected. Daniela calmly dismantled every claim Sabrina made, backed by receipts, reports, and time-stamped messages. By the time it ended, even Sabrina's lawyer looked like he was praying for early retirement. When the judge finally spoke, her tone was firm but amused. Mrs. Hart, I recommend you stop watching courtroom dramas. They seem to be giving you the wrong impression of how reality works. Your case is dismissed. Gavel. Bang. Done. For a second, Sabrina didn't move. Then, slowly, she stood, straightened her blazer, and muttered, This isn't over. I smiled. Oh, I think it is. The credits are literally rolling. The audience snickered. She stormed out, heels clicking like gunshots on the marble floor. Her lawyer followed, dragging his briefcase like a man carrying the weight of regret. Daniela packed up our files with her usual calm efficiency. Congratulations, she said. You survived Act 2 of the Sabrina Hart Show. I laughed. Let's hope it gets canceled before the finale. Alvarez, who'd been watching from the back like a proud director, walked up and patted my shoulder. That was art, my friend. Pure art. You didn't even have to raise your voice. Silence, I said, is the best revenge. It confuses them. He chuckled. You know what the best part is? She still thinks she's the main character. Let her, I said. She can star in whatever fantasy she wants. Just not in my life. As we walked out of the courthouse, a reporter approached with a microphone. Mr. Hart, any comment on today's outcome? I smiled for the cameras. Yeah, honesty's free. You should try it sometime. The clip went viral by evening. My phone blew up with texts from friends and strangers alike. Caleb, my business partner, sent a message that said, Bro, you went full courtroom mic drop. I replied, had to. She kept turning my life into a circus. Figured I might as well run the show. That night, back home, I sat on the couch in total silence. No yelling, no accusations, no designer chaos, just peace. It felt weird at first, like my brain didn't know what to do without the noise. Then I laughed to myself. She'd wanted an audience, a story, a spectacle. Well, she got one. And I got something better, closure. The next morning, I found one of her old note cards on the kitchen counter. It read, Remember, stay composed, look sympathetic. I smiled, crumpled it up, and tossed it into the trash. Because in the end, Sabrina didn't just lose the case. She lost her audience. There are few sounds more satisfying than the sound of karma catching up, and in my case, karma didn't whisper. It laughed. Loudly. Like a full-on comedy special sponsored by Poetic Justice. The morning of the final ruling felt like déjà vu. The courthouse was the same, the crowd was the same, but the energy was different. This time, I wasn't walking in as the accused. I was walking in as the man who'd already won. And I didn't even need to gloat. My silence did it for me. I showed up early, calm, coffee in hand, dressed in my navy suit, the unbothered but lethal uniform. Sabrina arrived 10 minutes late, of course, dragging her lawyer behind her like a reluctant pet. She looked flawless, as usual, hair curled, outfit pressed, confidence artificially inflated. The difference was that today, she looked nervous. The kind of nervous you can smell. She sat down, threw me a glare sharp enough to slice glass, and whispered something to her lawyer. He just nodded, probably praying she wouldn't start another monologue. Across the aisle, Daniela was all business. She had her tablet out, notes perfectly organized, coffee untouched, because professionals don't need caffeine when fueled by other people's stupidity. Detective Alvarez was sitting behind us, looking like a proud uncle at graduation. He gave me a small nod. When Judge Wong entered, everyone stood. The woman looked amused. That was my first clue that the day was about to be legendary. Let's get this over with, she said, sighing as she adjusted her glasses. Mr. and Mrs. Hart, again. Sabrina shot to her feet, like she'd been waiting for her cue. Your Honor, she began, voice trembling just enough to sound rehearsed. I'd like to say something before the proceedings. The judge raised an eyebrow. Is it relevant, Mrs. Hart? Yes, Your Honor. I've been portrayed unfairly in this courtroom. I've been called manipulative, dishonest, even criminal. But I'm just a woman trying to survive after being emotionally destroyed by a man who... Stop. Judge Wong held up a hand. Mrs. Hart, this is not an audition for a reality show. Please sit. The laughter started small, a few chuckles from the back row, then grew like wildfire. Even I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from losing it. Sabrina froze mid-sentence, color draining from her face. She sat down stiffly, whispering to her lawyer, "She's biased." Biased towards sanity, I muttered under my breath. Then came the moment we'd all been waiting for. Daniela stood, calm as ever. Your Honor, before we proceed, I'd like to submit Exhibit B, the forensic handwriting report, along with documented evidence of communication between Mrs. Hart and a known fraud consultant. Sabrina's lawyer objected, voice cracking like he'd swallowed his nerves. Objection irrelevant. Overruled, Judge Wong said instantly, already flipping through the pages. And then, it happened. The laugh. It started with a soft chuckle. Then the judge leaned back, shaking her head, and let out a laugh so loud the bailiff blinked. This, she said between giggles, is the most ridiculous fraud attempt I have ever seen. The room went silent, then erupted again in restrained laughter. Even the court clerk was smiling. Sabrina looked horrified. Your Honor, that's private evidence. No, the judge said, still laughing, this is public stupidity. According to this report, the pen used to sign this document didn't exist when the signature was allegedly made. Mrs. Hart, did you borrow Doc Brown's DeLorean to time travel for your forgery? The courtroom lost it. People were covering their mouths, shoulders shaking, even a few tears of laughter glistening. Alvarez leaned forward and whispered, "That's my new ringtone." Sabrina's lawyer tried to salvage the wreckage. Your Honor, perhaps my client made an honest mistake. An honest mistake? The judge's eyebrows shot up. Forging a business agreement with future technology is not a mistake, Mr. Lewis. It's a science fiction plot. More laughter. The stenographer actually paused typing to wipe her eyes. Sabrina turned red, gripping the edge of the table. This is harassment, she shouted. He set me up. The judge sighed, finally composing herself. Mrs. Hart, the only thing your husband set up was a bank account you couldn't resist raiding. Now sit down before I hold you in contempt. The room went quiet for a beat, the kind of silence that makes humiliation echo louder. Sabrina sank into her chair, shaking her head, eyes glistening with tears that were definitely not from sadness, more like disbelief that her perfect victim act had collapsed. I stayed silent, hands folded, face calm. I didn't need to say a word. My calmness was killing her faster than any insult could. The judge cleared her throat. Mr. Hart, you've been remarkably patient through this situation. Would you like to make a statement before I rule? I stood, buttoned my jacket, and nodded respectfully. Just one, Your Honor. She gestured. Go ahead. I turned slightly, facing Sabrina. For the record, I never wanted it to come to this. But I also didn't want to spend my life wondering if my wife was going to treat our marriage like a corporate heist. I hope this experience teaches her, and everyone watching, that honesty doesn't expire like a credit card. Judge Wong smiled. Well said, Mr. Hart. Anything else? Yes, I said, pausing for effect. I'd like to officially retire from the role of emotional ATM. I believe the position has been terminated with cause. The room exploded again. Even the bailiff chuckled behind his hand. Sabrina glared daggers at me. You think this is funny? I met her stare. Not funny. Educational. Mrs. Hart, the judge interjected, I suggest you stop speaking. Every sentence you add is an extra 5 minutes of embarrassment. At that, the gallery burst into quiet applause. Someone actually clapped, before the bailiff shot them a look. The judge banged her gavel. Order. Although, I must admit, that was well timed. Once the laughter died down, she turned serious. In light of the overwhelming evidence of forgery and fraud, this court not only dismisses Mrs. Hart's claims, but also refers her for investigation regarding falsified documentation. Sabrina's lawyer looked like he might faint. Why, Your Honor? She cut him off. Mr. Lewis, I suggest you get your client new stationery, and maybe a calendar from the correct year. I swear I saw Alvarez trying not to clap. The final gavel hit sounded like a victory drum. Case dismissed. Mrs. Hart, you are free to leave, but not too far. I have a feeling we'll be seeing you again soon. Sabrina sat frozen, mouth slightly open, as if her brain had blue-screened. Her lawyer leaned in, whispering frantically, but she wasn't listening. She just stared at me. You'll regret this, she hissed as the courtroom emptied. Already did, I said, grabbing my folder. That's why we're here. Outside the courtroom, the energy was electric. Reporters were everywhere, microphones shoved into faces. One asked, Mr. Hart, any comment on today's outcome? I smiled. Yeah, honesty wins. Every single time. The clip hit social media before I even made it to my car. That afternoon, Daniela called. She's trending. I laughed. For the right reasons, I hope. Oh, definitely. Hashtags include hashtag forgery queen and hashtag pin from the future. I nearly spit out my drink. No way. Way, Daniela said, chuckling. Apparently, someone's already selling shirts. I shook my head. That's America. We turn everything into merch. By evening, Sabrina's luxury wellness brand had gone private. Her influencer friends suddenly stopped tagging her. She posted one last cryptic message. People will twist your story when they can't handle your truth. The comments were brutal. One person wrote, yeah, but your truth is in Comic Sans. I shouldn't have laughed as hard as I did. But I did. Later that night, I sat out on the balcony with a glass of whiskey, looking out over the city. The chaos, the noise, the circus, all finally over. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel tense. It felt earned. My phone buzzed. Alvarez. You see the clip? He asked. Yeah, I said, grinning. Guess the judge's laugh went viral. Man, he said, chuckling. I've seen some dumb cases in my career, but yours? That was poetic. She forged your signature with a pen that didn't exist yet. That's history. Yeah, I said, leaning back in my chair. You think they'll teach it in law school? They should, he replied. Lesson 1. Never mess with a calm man and his lawyer. I raised my glass. I'll drink to that. When I finally went to bed, I slept like a man who'd just evicted chaos. No stress, no alarms, no texts asking for money for energy realignment retreats. Just peace, and maybe a little smug satisfaction. Because at the end of the day, Sabrina didn't just lose a case. She lost her audience, her act, and her illusion of control. And in that courtroom, when justice laughed, it wasn't just at her. It was laughing with me. When the bailiff cuffed her for fraud and forgery, Sabrina finally stopped talking. That alone felt like divine intervention. She turned to me as they led her away, eyes full of that same entitled disbelief she'd worn since the day she first maxed out my credit card. You'll regret this, she spat. I smiled. Already did, sweetheart. That's why we're here. The gavel had barely cooled before my phone started buzzing. Friends, reporters, even Caleb, my business partner, texting things like, bro, she really tried time travel forgery, and damn, Netflix needs to call you. Outside, the sun felt different. Lighter, warmer, like the universe had finally unclogged its moral drain. Daniela high-fived me on the courthouse steps. Alvarez handed me a coffee and said, next time, marry someone with fewer monologues. I laughed for the first time in months. Real laughter. The kind that doesn't hide behind exhaustion or sarcasm. 6 months later, I was in my new office, sipping espresso while my company numbers climbed higher than ever. Peace looked good on me. No drama, no fake apologies, no self-care retreats billed to my Amex. Just quiet wins and a bank account that finally belonged to me again. Sabrina got 3 years. Apparently, the judge didn't appreciate artistic forgery as a defense. Her social media disappeared faster than her conscience, and her fan club went with it. Sometimes, late at night, I think about her, not with anger, just amusement. The woman who once wanted to live off my fortune now lives off taxpayers. And that infamous signature she forged, the one that started her downfall, it didn't just backfire. It blew up her entire show. My wife's company's event planner called. Your wife, the manager, asked to remove you from the guest list, but she wants to keep the $70,000 deposit you paid. I smiled and said, actually, cancel the entire event. She hesitated, but sir, you're not the manager. I replied calmly, no, but I own the company. It was one of those mornings that already felt expensive before anything even happened. The sun had that smug, too bright shine that makes you question every adult decision that led you to sitting in a cafe where the Wi-Fi barely worked, but the barista had tattoos that made you afraid to complain. I was halfway through my $7.25 caramel latte, half coffee, half regret, when my phone buzzed across the marble table like a nervous intern. "Hi, this is Chloe from Starflare Events," the voice said, all chipper nerves and shaky professionalism. Now, usually, when someone says your name with that much hesitation, you already know the next sentence is about to be stupid. I leaned back, sipped the overpriced liquid candy, and gave a polite, "Hey there, Chloe, what's up?" She cleared her throat like she was about to read the terms and conditions of my own humiliation. "Your wife, Mrs. Bennett, the manager, requested that you be removed from the guest list for the company's anniversary gala. But she said you already paid the $70,000 deposit, and they'd like to keep it." For a second, I just blinked. Not in shock. More in that quiet, spiritual disbelief you feel when you realize someone's audacity has evolved into a new species. I didn't choke on my coffee. I didn't even flinch. I just smiled, the kind of slow grin that makes people wonder if you're calm or if they should start running. "Actually," I said, nice and soft, the way you talk to a puppy that just peed on your rug, "cancel the entire event." There was a pause long enough to fit an entire therapy session. "But sir," she stammered, you're not the manager." I took another sip. It tasted better now, less like caramel and more like victory. "No," I said, "but I own the company." The silence that followed could have been bottled and sold as instant regret. You could almost hear her soul buffering. "Wait," she gasped, "you own Brightline Holdings?" "Correct," I replied, casually brushing a crumb off my sleeve. "The parent company. So, yeah, go ahead and cancel it. Send everyone home. We'll issue refunds where appropriate," which, spoiler alert, will not be appropriate. I could practically hear her jaw dislocate. The poor woman probably had a script for difficult brides, but not for the CEO of the building she was decorating. She mumbled a panicked, "Why yes, sir. I understand," and hung up so fast I could feel the wind from the digital slam. And just like that, my coffee tasted phenomenal. People always assume that revenge needs fireworks, but honestly, sometimes it's just one phone call during your mid-morning caffeine break. I stared out the cafe window, watching a group of joggers sprint past like they were being chased by their life choices, and thought about how bizarre it was that the woman I married, Haley Bennett, self-appointed queen of everything, had decided to uninvite me from a party I was paying for. To most people, that would sting. To me, it was hilarious. You see, I wasn't just some suit with a bank account. I was the bank account. Brightline Holdings wasn't just a company on paper. It was my baby, my Frankenstein monster built out of spreadsheets and caffeine and an ungodly amount of startup stress. Haley, my lovely and ambitious wife, managed one of our subsidiaries, Brightline Events and Design, a business she now ran like it was her own personal stage. For years, I let her have the spotlight. Let her shake hands, cut ribbons, post pictures about leadership on LinkedIn with captions like, "Success tastes better when shared with a great team." Conveniently forgetting to tag the guy who funded her espresso machine, her team, and the literal building she was standing in. So when Chloe from Starflare called to tell me I was off the guest list, I didn't get angry. Anger is loud. Anger gets you in headlines. I've always preferred quiet power moves, the kind that make people doubt whether you even blinked before detonating their plans. I checked the time. 10:30 a.m. If I canceled the event now, she'd find out around lunch, right when she'd be showing off her new designer dress to the interns. Perfect timing. I opened the Brightline portal on my phone, verified the accounts, and smiled at the beautiful sight of everything being under my name. Every license, every vendor, every insurance policy. My fingerprints were all over it like a digital signature of karma. I called the Starflare office back, just to make sure Chloe didn't faint and forget. She picked up on the first ring, voice trembling. "Hello, Mr. Bennett." "Hi, Chloe. Just confirming the cancellation went through. Make sure all correspondence goes directly to me. And, if Mrs. Bennett calls you, just tell her to contact finance." "Yes, sir," she whispered, sounding like she'd just been knighted by a very polite villain. "Good," I said, smiling so wide my reflection in the laptop looked smug. "And Chloe, yes. Next time you need approval for anything involving Brightline Holdings funds, skip the manager, and call the owner. Click. The cafe door chimed as I stood to leave, and for once, I didn't feel like the tired husband of a career hurricane. I felt like myself again, Ryan Bennett, man who signs checks and cancels parties before noon. Outside, the October air smelled like roasted coffee beans and impending drama. I could already imagine Haley's expression when she got the email from Starflare. That slow-motion crumble between confusion and outrage. She'd probably think it was a mistake at first. Then she'd call me. Then she'd remember she'd just uninvited me that morning in front of half the office. I took my time walking back to the car, savoring the peace before the storm. You don't get many moments of pure satisfaction in life. This one deserved a slow-motion soundtrack. The first ping hit as I unlocked the door. Incoming call, Haley. Of course. I let it ring out. Twice. She tried again. Decline. A text popped up instead. What did you do? I typed back, just what you asked. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. If anxiety had a Morse code, that was it. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the coffee buzz had morphed into a full-on adrenaline high. I turned off the engine, reclined the seat, and laughed. Like, actual laugh. The kind of sound I hadn't made since the day I discovered my accountant had spelled my name right on a tax deduction. $70,000. That's how much she'd planned to burn on a single night of champagne selfies and corporate peacocking. 70 grand to rent a ballroom, order overpriced lobster tails, and listen to a jazz quartet play to investors who couldn't tell a balance sheet from a menu. The same investors who would now be receiving cancellation notices signed by me. Karma wasn't just poetic, it was punctual. I went inside, set the empty coffee cup on the counter, and stared at the fridge like it owed me an explanation for the last 5 years of marriage. We weren't always like this. Back when Haley and I first met, she was funny, charming, ambitious, and, more importantly, she laughed at my terrible jokes. We built everything together, late nights, early mornings, frozen pizza dinners over spreadsheets. But somewhere between we and I, she decided the story sounded better with only one name on the cover. So fine, she could have the spotlight. I'd just own the stage. At noon, my phone exploded. Missed calls, texts, emails from middle managers trying to sound calm while spelling my name wrong. I ignored them all. I wasn't going to explain a single thing until Haley did something first. Let her spin. Let her sweat. Let her Google, can your husband legally cancel your event if he owns the parent company? I poured myself a glass of bourbon. Yeah, bourbon at noon. Judge me later. And toasted silently to my reflection in the kitchen window. To the uninvited guest, I said, taking a slow sip, may your enemies always RSVP late. The drink burned, but in that satisfying way that tells you you're alive, powerful, and slightly petty. The holy trinity of male recovery. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was from my lawyer, Sharon Wells. She didn't even say hello. Ryan, she said, voice sharp with amusement. Did you just nuke your wife's event? Define nuke, I said. The venue's on fire with calls, and Haley's office is trending on internal chat like a bad reality show. I grinned. Then yeah, nuke. She laughed. I love my job. Send me a bill, I said. Haley can cover it. The rest of the afternoon played like a slow-motion comedy. By 2 o'clock, the Starflare Instagram account had quietly deleted the post about Brightline's exclusive anniversary gala. By 3, my assistant sent me a message saying half the vendors were demanding clarification. By 4, Haley's mother texted me. Ryan, sweetheart, please call Haley. She's very upset. I replied, she'll be fine. Tell her to hydrate. It was bliss. Pure, caffeinated bliss. That night, I sat on the porch, bourbon in one hand, laptop in the other, watching the digital carnage unfold. Emails stacked like dominoes, each one a little funnier than the last. Urgent. Event canceled. Need explanation. Urgent. Is this real? Can someone call HR? I didn't respond to a single one. Silence is the most luxurious answer money can buy. When the sky turned purple and the first stars came out, I realized I was smiling again. A real one this time, not the polite kind you wear in boardrooms. Haley had tried to erase me from my own story, and instead, I'd just rewritten the plot. For the first time in months, maybe years, the world felt balanced again. I wasn't just the background investor funding someone else's applause. I was the reason the lights stayed on. And now, I was the guy who turned them off. I raised my glass to the quiet night, the canceled gala, and the confused chaos that would roll into tomorrow. To control, I whispered, and to coffee that finally tastes right. You know those couples you see at networking events who look like a success story straight out of a glossy magazine? The husband standing politely in the corner while his wife commands the room, shaking hands, laughing too loudly, pretending she invented charisma? Yeah, that was us. Except I was the idiot funding the magazine subscription. My name's Ryan Bennett, 41, allegedly mature CEO of Brightline Holdings, though my wife prefers to call me Ryan from finance, like I'm some middle management spreadsheet enthusiast she met at a bar once. She, on the other hand, is Haley Bennett, the manager of Brightline Events, which is adorable because that company happens to be one of 7 subsidiaries under my umbrella. Meaning, I built it, I bankroll it, and technically, I could delete her job faster than she deletes our anniversary reminders. Don't get me wrong, I used to adore her ambition. Back when we met, she was an assistant with big dreams, big opinions, and a bigger collection of motivational coffee mugs. She'd stay up late researching vendors, scribbling ideas, building pitch decks like her life depended on it. And it worked, because I believed in her. I invested in her. Not just emotionally, but literally. I was the silent partner who wasn't supposed to stay silent forever. But somewhere along the way, Haley, my wife, became Haley, the brand. The woman who used to fall asleep on my shoulder while we brainstormed client lists started introducing me at events like I was part of the furniture. "This is Ryan," she'd say with a tight smile. "He works in finance." "Ma'am, I am finance. I'm the reason your Wi-Fi bill clears on time. But sure, let's pretend I just handle petty cash." Every time she said it, I'd feel that little sting, the one you don't admit hurts because you're too proud to look insecure. And every time, I'd just smile, sip my drink, and remind myself that silent power is still power. My lawyer, Sharon, calls it strategic passivity. I call it revenge simmering in low heat. Now, I've learned that ego is the most expensive addiction in corporate America. Haley had overdosed. The woman was high on applause, running on adrenaline and compliments from people who'd sell her soul for a LinkedIn shout-out. She started treating me like an optional extra in her success story. Like I was lucky she hadn't upgraded to a newer model husband with better PR. So, when the Starflare planner told me I was removed from my own event's guest list, it didn't even register as shocking anymore. It felt inevitable, like the universe finally decided to hit play on the karma playlist I'd been building since year 3 of our marriage. I didn't react out of anger. No, anger's too loud. Anger's what gets you called emotional in court later. I reacted with curiosity, which is a far more dangerous state of mind. Curiosity is what made Eve bite the apple and made me log into Brightline's internal systems at 11:47 p.m. that same night with a whiskey in hand and an attitude problem. And boy, what a sight. Invoices stacked like confessions. Haley's department had been spending money like a college freshman with a new credit card. Flower arrangements for boardrooms. Designer centerpieces for client meetings. A team bonding trip to Maui for 5 people, 4 of whom mysteriously had her last name. I chuckled into my glass. Team bonding, huh? The only thing being bonded was my patience. Still, the part that hit me hardest wasn't the money. I had plenty of that. It was the narrative. Every public-facing document, every company profile, every press mention listed Haley as founder and managing director of Brightline Events. Founder. Let that sink in. Founder of a company that literally exists inside the corporate structure of my holding firm. It's like your roommate claiming they invented the apartment because they bought a plant. She had rewritten history, our history, and turned me into a footnote. But here's the thing, I don't shout. I don't throw things. I don't slam doors or write long passive-aggressive Facebook posts about toxic dynamics. I plan, because while Haley was busy curating her image, I was curating evidence. Paper trails, email threads, bank transfers, the kind of quiet ammunition you can use to blow up someone's PR empire without ever raising your voice. I remember sitting in my office that night, watching the cursor blink on the company dashboard and whispering to myself, "You forgot who pays for the lights, sweetheart." The next morning, Haley was already in full CEO cosplay. She waltzed into the kitchen in her pencil skirt and girl boss energy, Bluetooth headset glued to her ear, barking orders at someone like she was running NASA instead of planning corporate brunches. I poured my coffee slowly, deliberately, the way villains do before the third act twist. "Morning," I said. She gave a distracted, MHM, while typing furiously on her phone. "Big day?" I asked. "Always," she said, not looking up. "Investor calls. The gala team. Press outreach. I might be late tonight." I smiled. "That's okay. You can tell them all I said hi, assuming I'm still on the guest list." She froze. Just for a second. A glitch in the matrix. Then she laughed it off like she hadn't just been caught mid-deletion. "Don't start, Ryan. It's a professional event. Clients only." "Oh, I see," I said. "And I guess being the owner doesn't make me a client." "Ryan, don't make this about you," she said, pulling her blazer on. That line, that cursed, gender-neutral dagger of a sentence that every self-absorbed spouse uses right before things implode. "Don't make this about you." "Honey, it's literally about me." I wanted to say something sharp, but instead, I just nodded, smiled, and thought, "You're right. I'll make it about us, just not the way you think." People like Haley thrive on control. They love crafting perfect optics. So the greatest way to dismantle them isn't by yelling. It's by flipping the lights off while they're still posing for the cameras. When she left for work that morning, I sat back down at my desk, opened my laptop, and started pulling strings. Brightline Holdings wasn't just a name, it was a spider web. Every subsidiary was tied to it by contracts, funding streams, and authorizations, all signed by me. I was the invisible god in the system. Every invoice she'd ever approved, every deposit she'd ever received, every vendor she'd ever bragged about, all of it came from my account. That's when it hit me. I didn't need to confront her. I didn't even need to raise my voice. All I had to do was quietly remind the world who was really in charge. By the time Chloe from Starflare made that now famous call, the chessboard was already set. Haley thought she was playing checkers. Now, I'll be honest, a small part of me missed the old her. The one who used to bring me burnt pancakes on Sunday mornings because she'd read somewhere that breakfast in bed strengthens relationships. The woman who once called me at 3 a.m. just to tell me she'd landed her first big client. But people change. Ambition changes them faster. She started chasing admiration like it was oxygen, and I started watching from the sidelines, wondering when she'd remember to breathe. Sometimes, I'd see her practicing speeches in the mirror, adjusting her hair, perfecting her smile, testing her applause breaks. Once, she caught me watching and said, "You should be proud of me." "I am," I'd said, and I meant it. Back then. Now, I was just done. Done playing the quiet partner in someone else's ego play. So, after the call with Chloe, after the caffeine and the chaos, I realized something crucial. Haley hadn't just removed me from a guest list. She'd freed me from the illusion that we were still a team. And freedom, my friend, is worth more than $70,000. Later that night, I got a text from her. "Haley, please tell me you didn't really cancel it." Me. "Check your email." 2 minutes later, "Haley, are you insane?" I typed back, "Maybe, but I'm rich, so it's cute." I stared at the bubbles as she typed and erased a dozen times. Then nothing. Silence. I poured another drink and said out loud, to no one, "That's what happens when you forget who signs your paycheck, Mrs. Manager." And for the first time in months, I actually slept well. No spreadsheets, no financial projections running through my head, just peace. The kind of peace that comes when you finally take back control of your own story. It's funny, marriage is supposed to be a merger, right? Two entities joining forces to build something stronger. But somewhere along the way, Haley started treating it like a hostile takeover. She tried to own the narrative, the company, the image. And me? I just quietly bought back the stock. People think revenge is about making someone else hurt. It's not. It's about restoring balance. And as I drifted off that night, I knew balance was coming. Fast. She wanted to be the face of Brightline? Fine. But I was about to remind her who held the strings behind the curtain. And I was going to do it with a smile. That night, after a day of pretending everything was normal, I sat on the couch with my laptop, a glass of bourbon, and a playlist called Motivation for Petty Kings. The house was quiet. Haley was still at the office, which translated to sulking somewhere expensive. The silence was so sweet I could have bottled it and sold it next to the scented candles she used to buy in bulk when she was manifesting abundance. I cracked my knuckles, logged into the Brightline corporate portal, and there it was, my digital kingdom glowing back at me in corporate blue. Every contract, every signature, every cent that had ever touched one of our subsidiaries, all stamped with my name. Ryan E. Bennett, owner. You know that scene in every superhero movie where the guy realizes his powers? Yeah, that was me, except my cape was a faded hoodie and my superpower was legal control. I scrolled through the files like a tourist in my own empire. Payrolls, invoices, vendor lists. It was all there, sitting quietly like it owed me rent. People in Haley's department probably thought I was some silent investor, the kind of husband who just shows up for photos and pays the bills like it's his hobby. They had no idea I was the ghost in their machine, the reason their paychecks didn't bounce, the man literally keeping the Wi-Fi on while they called me finance guy in the break room. Funny thing, ghosts see everything. One folder caught my eye, Starflare Gala invoices. I opened it, and sweet mother of markup, the spending was biblical. Champagne fountains, floral walls, crystal chandeliers that cost more than some people's college tuition. A receipt for 12 grand labeled table accent crystals. I laughed so hard I almost spilled my bourbon. Table accent crystals, I muttered, because normal tables just aren't smug enough. I took a screenshot for the memories. Scrolling further, I saw Haley's signature on every approval. Her digital autograph, looping and elegant, like she'd signed with perfume instead of ink. I hovered over one particularly juicy line item. Entertainment, private DJ package, $18,500. I remembered her saying the company needed to elevate its image. I guess elevate now meant launch a private music festival for narcissists. And yet, the best part? Every contract ended with one small line of legal poetry. Approved by Ryan Bennett, CEO, Brightline Holdings. That's the thing about being quiet. You learn to let people hang themselves with the rope you provided. I leaned back, sipping my drink. The living room lights reflected off the laptop screen, casting that cinematic glow that always shows up right before the protagonist does something irreversible. My reflection looked calm, too calm, maybe a little smug. But when your wife just tried to erase you from your own event, smug feels therapeutic. I wasn't planning to explode. I wasn't even planning to argue. I've seen what public fights do to people in our social circle. One viral clip, one sources close to the couple say, and suddenly you're trending under hashtag divorce goals. No, I preferred my destruction with a side of quiet paperwork. Clean, legal, final. So I picked up my phone and called Sharon Wells, my lawyer and unofficial therapist for corporate drama. Sharon's the kind of woman who could negotiate peace treaties during lunch and still make it home for spin class. She once got me out of a disastrous merger with a single paragraph that started, per Clause 14b, my client refuses stupidity as a business model. She answered on the second ring. Ryan, she said, voice calm, but with that you up to something edge. Evening, Sharon. You busy saving the world? Only halfway. What's on fire? I smiled. Haley tried to uninvite me from the Brightline Gala. There was a pause. She what? Removed me from the guest list. Told the planners I'm not welcome. 70 grand deposit, all paid from corporate funds. Oh my God, she laughed. Deep, full-bodied, lawyer with wine-in-hand laughter. Please tell me you're recording this marriage for educational purposes. Tempting, I said. Anyway, I canceled the event. Her laughter stopped. You actually did it? Effective immediately. Jesus Christ, Ryan. You didn't just light a match, you installed a fireplace. Maybe. I swirled my bourbon. But the house needed remodeling. She exhaled, probably rubbing her temples. All right. Technically, you're in the clear. You own the parent company. Legally, Brightline Events can't override your decisions. Want me to prep a shutdown notice, just in case? I thought for a moment. Not yet. I'm enjoying the trailer before the movie. She chuckled again. You're a dangerous man when you're polite. That's why you bill me extra. After the call, I sat there staring at the laptop, scrolling through the digital guts of Brightline. The sheer control was intoxicating. Every forgotten password, every buried email, it all painted the same picture. Haley had built her empire on my scaffolding. She strutted around giving TED Talk vibes, but I was the one paying for the microphone. There's a line she threw at me once during an argument, back when we still pretended our fights were about work. She'd snapped. You'd be nothing without me. It hit me then like an insult. Tonight, it hit differently. Because the same sentence worked beautifully in reverse. I'd be fine without her, but she'd be nowhere without me. The realization didn't make me angry. It made me peaceful, like realizing your phone's been on airplane mode, and suddenly you're unreachable to everyone who drains you. I decided to take a little stroll through the internal communications platform, Brightline Connect. It's basically corporate Slack for people who think they're too important for emojis. I searched my own name. The results were educational. Ryan's just a shareholder, right? Yeah, Haley handles everything. He's nice though. Quiet. Quiet. The word burned and soothed at the same time. Quiet isn't weakness, it's preparation. I typed a private message to Sharon. Draft me a memo for control transfer options. Don't send it, just keep it warm. She replied instantly. This is going to be fun, isn't it? Oh, I typed back. You have no idea. Around midnight, Haley finally came home. Her heels clicked against the hardwood like a countdown. I closed the laptop and pretended to be half asleep on the couch. She stopped in the doorway, looking at me like I was a wild animal she wasn't sure was sedated. You're still up? She asked. Couldn't sleep, I said. Too busy thinking about all the exciting company developments. Her eyes narrowed. What did you do? Me? I smiled. Nothing major. Just trimmed some fat. Ryan. Relax, I said, raising my glass. Everything's under control. My control. She scoffed. You're unbelievable. Thank you, I said, sipping. I practice. She glared at me for a full 10 seconds before stomping upstairs, muttering something about petty men and their power trips. If irony had calories, that sentence would have fed a village. When she was gone, I pulled out my phone and reread Sharon's text thread. Just seeing those documents gave me the same satisfaction other men probably get from gym selfies. Proof of power. Proof that I wasn't crazy for feeling sidelined. I opened my notes app and wrote a single line. Phase 1. Reclaim the narrative. I wasn't just taking back the company. I was taking back the story. The version of Ryan Bennett the world thought they knew, the quiet husband, the faceless financier, was about to be replaced with something much less predictable. The next morning, I woke up early. Too early. The kind of early that makes your coffee machine groan like, bro, chill. I showered, dressed, and headed to the office before sunrise. The city was still half asleep, which made it the perfect time to start rearranging the chessboard. When I walked into the Brightline Holdings building, the night security guard blinked in surprise. Mr. Bennett? Didn't expect you in this early. Couldn't sleep, I said again, smiling. Thought I'd check on my kingdom. He laughed politely, probably assuming I was joking. I wasn't. Upstairs, the office was empty except for the hum of servers and the faint smell of burnt coffee someone had forgotten to throw out. I logged into my terminal, bypassed 3 layers of admin access, and opened the internal permissions system. For every executive, there's a digital key. I started tweaking them one by one. Nothing too drastic, just small changes. Haley's access to financial approvals, revoked. Her ability to hire new vendors, temporarily frozen. Her permissions to authorize spending over 10 grand, pending review. I sat back and whispered, welcome to the silent treatment, corporate edition. By the time the first employees trickled in, I was gone, like a ghost, leaving behind a system that still looked perfectly normal until someone tried to open a locked door. On the drive home, the sunrise hit the windshield just right, flooding the car with that golden light directors love in redemption scenes. I wasn't redeemed yet, but damn, I was on my way. I turned on the radio, some motivational podcast about manifesting boundaries. I laughed out loud. Already ahead of you, Karen. When I got home, Haley was in the kitchen, dressed in her power suit, scrolling furiously through her phone. She didn't even look up when she said, Starflare called. They said the event's officially canceled. Investors are freaking out. Home. I said, opening the fridge. You want eggs? Ryan, this isn't funny. I shrugged. You're right. It's hilarious. Her eyes flashed. You're sabotaging me. Correction, I said, pouring orange juice. I'm auditing you. You can't just. Actually, I interrupted. I can. And I did. You forgot one thing, Haley. When you build an empire on someone else's foundation, you don't get to complain when the landlord asks for rent. She stood there, speechless, clutching her phone like it was a weapon that had just jammed. I kissed her on the cheek, grabbed my juice, and walked out before she could recover. Always leave them stunned. That's rule 1 of emotional judo. That afternoon, Sharon called again. So, she said, phase 2. Not yet, I said. Let her stew. She needs to realize how powerless she is before we make it official. She hummed. You know, you could teach a masterclass in revenge. I laughed. Maybe I will. But first, I've got a company to reclaim. As I hung up, I looked out my office window at the skyline. For years, I'd been the man behind the curtain, pulling strings while everyone clapped for the magician in the spotlight. Now the curtain was gone, and the magician was about to learn who paid for the stage lights. They call it the silent treatment. But silence isn't empty, it's loaded. And mine was just getting started. If peace had a sound, it would have been that 5-minute stretch between 6:09 and 6:10 p.m., the quiet before hell realized I'd RSVP'd. At exactly 6:10, the first corporate detonation hit. My phone buzzed once, twice, then started convulsing like it had been possessed by the ghost of bad decisions. Texts, emails, notifications, everything lighting up in perfect chaos. You could practically smell the panic through the pixels. By 6:12, I had 24 missed calls, 3 voicemails, and 1 text from my wife, Haley, written entirely in capital letters. What did you do? I smiled. A slow, almost cinematic smile, the kind a man wears when karma finally clocks in for work. I took a sip of my wine, swirled it like I was tasting vintage justice, and texted back. Just what you asked. You said I wasn't invited. Her typing bubbles appeared instantly. 3 dots, then they vanished. Came back. Vanished again. It was like watching Morse code for panic. I could practically hear the tiny screams between her manic thumb taps. By 6:15, Starflare Events had sent the official cancellation blast. Every recipient got a cheery, professional little note. Due to unforeseen changes in company policy, Brightline Holdings has decided to cancel the upcoming gala. We appreciate your understanding and support during this adjustment. Adjustment. God bless PR people and their ability to make a corporate guillotine sound like a yoga pose. I leaned back on the couch, kicked my feet up, and watched the world burn through the soft glow of my phone screen. I've seen men spend fortunes trying to feel this powerful. Me? I just made a phone call before lunch. At 6:20, I got an email from Kelly, Haley's assistant, who had clearly aged 10 years in 15 minutes. Sir, I'm so sorry to bother you, but we have over 200 confirmed guests arriving next Friday, including several high-profile investors. Mrs. Bennett is asking for clarification regarding the cancellation notice. I replied almost immediately. No worries, Kelly. Clarified. The event's canceled. Tell them to invest in Uber Eats tonight. 10 seconds later, she sent another email that simply said, Sir, I didn't reply. Sometimes silence is the only management training people need. By 6:30, the company's internal chat platform, Brightline Connect, looked like Reddit during a stock market crash. Hundreds of pings. Managers, interns, even janitors, all trying to figure out who detonated the social event of the year. I scrolled through the chaos like a man watching fireworks from a yacht. Hashtag General. Did the owner really cancel the gala? Who even has authority for that? Wait, is Haley okay? My aunt's catering company was hired for this. Do we still show up? I just bought a tux. Someone owes me rent. It was like reading poetry. The digital kind. Someone tagged me directly. At Ryan B. Hi, sir. Is this accurate? Should we inform media partners? I typed one sentence and hit send. Yes. HR approves peace and quiet. That one hit harder than I expected. I actually laughed out loud. Loud enough that my dog, Baxter, lifted his head from the couch like, You good, man? Oh, I'm good, I said, scratching behind his ear. I'm better than good. I'm finally HR compliant. By 6:45, Haley's calls were nonstop. I didn't answer any of them. I wanted her to sit in that exquisite purgatory where she wasn't sure if I was furious, vindictive, or having dinner somewhere expensive. For all she knew, I was in Paris right now buying a baguette with her event deposit. When I finally opened my inbox again, there it was. Subject. Urgent. Please respond from Haley. Her tone screamed CEO in crisis, but read like a teenager caught sneaking out. Ryan, this isn't funny. The investors are calling me nonstop. The Starflare rep said you authorized this. Please tell me this is a misunderstanding. I typed back. No misunderstanding. You uninvited me. I just followed the company directive. Within 30 seconds, she replied, "This isn't how business works." You'd be surprised, I wrote. Turns out owning things comes with perks. You're making me look unprofessional. No, sweetheart, I said aloud as I typed. You did that yourself. Then I wrote, correction, you're making you look unprofessional. I'm just drinking wine. I hit send and toasted to my own audacity. By 7 p.m., Sharon, my lawyer/enabler, called. Okay, she said, laughter bubbling in her voice. What the hell did you do? Handle the scheduling conflict, I said. Ryan. Yes. I just got 3 calls from event vendors asking if Brightline Holdings is shutting down. Haley's apparently telling people there was a server hack. I choked on my drink. A hack? Oh yeah. She's doing damage control like it's a full-time job. Good, I said. Maybe she'll finally experience employment stress. Sharon laughed so hard she snorted. You're enjoying this way too much. Sharon, I've spent 5 years being the background music in my own marriage. Forgive me for dancing now that I've got the AUX cord. At 7:30, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Haley. This time, she wasn't yelling. Can we please talk in person? I didn't even hesitate. Sure. I'm free in about never. She didn't respond. That silence. Music. Absolute symphony. I flipped my phone to do not disturb, turned on Netflix, and poured another glass. I tried to focus on the show, but my inbox kept lighting up in the corner of the screen, each email subject line better than the last. Vendor payment hold inquiry. Urgent. Investor concerns about fiscal stability. Employee morale crisis update. That last one made me chuckle. Morale crisis? That's what happens when people forget who's footing the bill. At 8 o'clock, I got the piece de resistance, a text from Haley's mother. Ryan, honey, please call Haley. She's very upset. I stared at the message for a full minute, grinning like a man who's been waiting years for this level of irony. Her mother, the same woman who once told me, Haley's career would be fine even if you weren't around, was now begging me to stabilize her daughter's chaos. She'll be fine, I replied. Tell her to hydrate. I almost sent a follow-up saying, and maybe update her resume. But even I have limits. By 8:15, I had an idea. Not a petty one, a productive one. I grabbed my tablet and started drafting a memo. The subject line read, Reallocation of Event Funds, Brightline Employee Wellness Initiative. Inside I wrote, Given the recent decision to cancel unnecessary corporate expenditures, I've reallocated the $70,000 event deposit to the Employee Wellness Program. Funds will be used for mental health coverage, gym stipends, and paid volunteer days. It was beautiful. Corporate poetry. I CC'd HR, accounting, and my assistant, then hit send. 2 minutes later, replies flooded in. This is amazing, Mr. Bennett. Finally, a leadership decision that prioritizes employees. You're the best boss ever. Each compliment was another nail in the coffin of Haley's PR persona. At 9 p.m., I poured one last glass of wine and went out to the patio. The city skyline glittered like it was in on the joke. Somewhere out there, Haley was probably pacing her office, clutching her phone, trying to control a narrative that no longer belonged to her. I took a deep breath, letting the night air fill my lungs, and said to no one, This is what control feels like. My phone buzzed again. This time, not a text, but a call from one of our major investors, Eli Crawford, a man who sounded perpetually like he was about to sell you a yacht you didn't need. Ryan, my man, just got the memo. Love what you did with the funds. Really shows leadership. Didn't care much for the gala anyway. Too many speeches. I smirked. Glad to hear it, Eli. Always trying to keep things efficient. Keep it up, he said. The board will eat this up. After I hung up, I realized something wild. In a single evening, I'd not only ruined Haley's vanity project, but accidentally improved my public image. HR loved me, investors respected me, and the only person mad was the one who uninvited me. That's not karma. That's art. By 10 p.m., the adrenaline started to fade, replaced by a warm, satisfied calm. The kind you get after cleaning out a cluttered garage or deleting your ex's number for real this time. I sat there in the quiet, letting the city hum around me, and thought back to the moment I'd answered Chloe's call that morning. She'd sounded nervous, apologetic, afraid to deliver bad news to Mr. Bennett, the husband. If only she knew she was kicking off the most entertaining night of my year. I finished my wine, leaned back in the chair, and whispered to myself, "You wanted a manager, Haley? You got one." Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled, a perfect dramatic touch. I grinned at the sky. Nice timing. The next morning, I woke up to chaos headlines in the company newsletter. Gala canceled. Owner announces employee fund. My inbox was full again, but this time with praise, not panic. My assistant popped into my office, grinning like she'd just won the lottery. "Sir, social media is going crazy. Everyone's calling you the most grounded CEO in the city." "Grounded?" I said, spinning my chair. "That's one word for it." I checked my phone. Still no text from Haley. Good. Let her simmer. She'd made the mistake of thinking silence meant surrender. Turns out, silence was just me charging up. That evening, I poured myself another glass. No longer wine, but bourbon. Strong, smooth, deserved. I raised it toward the window and toasted softly. To peace, patience, and pettiness. Then I added, and to every employee who ever got left off a guest list. Baxter barked once, as if in approval. I smiled. Cheers, buddy. The emails had exploded. The chaos had peaked. And for the first time in years, the world knew exactly who was running the show. You ever walk into your office and instantly know that something catastrophic has happened, like a dog who smells guilt before the crime scene tape goes up? That was me the next morning. The air inside Brightline Holdings tasted like panic and burnt coffee. People were whispering in corners, clutching lattes like emotional support beverages, pretending to read emails that didn't exist. The vibe was post-apocalyptic chic. The fallout from the canceled gala had officially begun. I hadn't even made it to my desk before my assistant, Jenna, intercepted me with a look that screamed, "The villagers have torches." "Morning, boss," she said, breathless. "Just so you're prepared, there's been reaction." "Reaction?" I asked. "Sounds healthy." She blinked. "Sir, the entire events department is having a group cry in Conference B. HR's drafting statements. Vendors are calling nonstop." "Good," I said, stepping past her. "They're staying busy. Productivity is key." I wasn't being cruel. I was being efficient. Chaos reveals competence. You want to know who you can trust? Cancel something expensive and see who panics. When I walked into my office, the phone was already ringing. I let it ring. Twice. 3 times. By the 4th, I answered. "Ryan Bennett," I said, in my calmest "I pay your salary" tone. "Mr. Bennett," a voice huffed on the line. "This is Malcolm Firth, catering director for Starflare. I, just need confirmation. Did Brightline truly pull the plug?" "Absolutely," I said cheerfully. He hesitated. "We had 3 tons of lobster tails arriving Friday." "Ah, perfect," I interrupted. "You can pivot to a pop-up restaurant. The gala that never was. Charge double, call it performance art." "Sir, our deposit." "Non-refundable," I said, already scrolling through my calendar. "Clause 8.2 of your contract." But I admire the hustle. Then I hung up. I'd learned a long time ago that if you sound confident enough, people stop arguing. Confidence is 90% tone, 10% bourbon. By the time I checked my email, the subject lines were a buffet of corporate misery. Urgent, vendor escalation. Investors requesting clarity. Haley demanding statement from leadership. Every line was a course in a 5-star feast of consequences, and I was starving for it. I poured coffee from the office machine. It tasted like printer ink and ambition, but that didn't matter. Every sip was seasoned with satisfaction. At 9:15 a.m., the phone buzzed again. This time it was investor number 1, Douglas Carrington, a man who'd never once called me unless money was crying. "Ryan," he barked, "what the hell is going on? I'm hearing rumors the company's insolvent." I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. "Morning, Doug. The company's fine. Better than fine. We're streamlining operations. By canceling the biggest PR event of the year." "Exactly," I said. "We've chosen to focus on actual profitability instead of champagne fountains." There was a pause, then a slow, begrudging chuckle. "You're cutting costs. Smart. I like it." "Glad to hear it," I said. "We're calling it fiscal fasting. Detox for the balance sheet." He laughed. "You're ridiculous, but effective." Story of my life, Doug. The moment I hung up, I marked investor stabilized in my notes. 1 down, 199 to go. Meanwhile, down the hall, the gossip was spreading like free Wi-Fi. You could tell where Haley had walked by the trail of tense silence. She'd switched to her professional voice, the one that sounded like an inspirational podcast intro. Team, she was saying to whoever was within earshot, we've experienced an unexpected administrative miscommunication. Administrative miscommunication, translation, my husband called my bluff and now I'm improvising the national anthem of damage control. I stayed in my office, door closed, pretending to review quarterly reports while secretly watching the internal chat blow up again. Hashtag Leadership Hub. Did anyone approve this cancellation? Haley says the system glitched. How does a system accidentally refund 70 grand? Asking for a friend. Someone else wrote. This feels like that time Netflix canceled our favorite show mid-season. I typed anonymously. Welcome to corporate television. Cancellations build character. 10 seconds later, someone replied. Whoever wrote that deserves a raise. I smiled. I already had one. Around noon, Haley barged into my office. No knocking, no warning, just hurricane energy in heels. She slammed the door behind her so hard that my framed diploma trembled. You've completely humiliated me, she said, voice shaking. Lunch? I asked, holding up my sandwich. She ignored the offer. Do you realize people think we're collapsing? That investors are calling me nonstop. I'm sure they are, I said. It builds character. Her nostrils flared. You think this is funny? Not funny, I said thoughtfully. Entertaining. You're sabotaging me. Correction, I'm auditing you, I said, taking a slow bite. Big difference. Her jaw clenched so tight I could practically hear enamel grinding. Ryan, this isn't how you handle business, she hissed. You don't just cancel something to make a point. Actually, I said, wiping my hands. That's exactly how you handle business when someone forgets who runs the business. She folded her arms. You're being petty. Haley, if I were being petty, I'd have sent out a press release titled Manager Confuses Ownership with Marriage Privilege. This is strategy. She stood there, glaring at me, probably trying to calculate whether stabbing me with a letter opener would void the prenup. Finally, she spun on her heel and stormed out. The sound of her heels echoing down the hall was pure percussion. I leaned back, exhaled, and whispered, and scene. The rest of the afternoon was chaos theater at its finest. The receptionist reported that a florist was in the lobby refusing to leave until someone paid for 600 centerpieces. Accounting refused, citing budget realignment. HR sent a memo about team morale, which was code for everyone's gossiping instead of working. Meanwhile, my inbox filled with passive-aggressive questions from department heads. Just confirming if all client-facing events are under review? Should we inform vendors that all future contracts require CEO oversight? Do we still have jobs? I replied only to the last one. Yes. For now. Efficiency through mystery. Works every time. By 2 p.m., I was halfway through my second coffee when Sharon called again. Status update? She asked, sounding way too gleeful. Imagine the stock market during an earthquake, I said. She laughed. So, thriving. Essentially. I assume Haley confronted you. She tried. And I reminded her who owns the building. Sharon whistled. Remind me never to divorce you. Noted, I said. But you'd at least get alimony and good wine. She chuckled. So what's next? Let it marinate, I said. You don't serve revenge right out of the oven. You let it rest so the flavor sets in. You're a poet of pettiness, Ryan. I try. At 3 p.m., Haley's mother called. Ryan, what is happening over there? She demanded. Haley's distraught. People are calling me for statements. I pretended to be shocked. Wow, really? People care what you think. That's new. Don't be sarcastic with me. Then don't call me during work hours, I said sweetly. I'm busy running the company your daughter thinks she founded. There was a gasp, a sputter, then the blessed sound of a hang-up. 5 minutes later, Haley texted, Did you just hang up on my mother? I replied, No. She hung up on accountability. Around 4, the press finally caught wind. An email from a local business journalist slid into my inbox. Mr. Bennett, sources confirm Brightline's gala was canceled unexpectedly. Any comment? I cracked my knuckles and typed. Brightline Holdings continually prioritizes efficiency and employee well-being. Sometimes that means canceling parties and funding purpose. We believe substance outlasts champagne. Boom. PR gold. Within an hour, 3 business blogs had reposted it with headlines like CEO redirects gala funds to employee wellness. The comments section read like a self-help seminar. Finally, a boss who gets it. We stand a responsible king. I sat there, basking in digital applause while Haley's LinkedIn post about grace under pressure got 2 pity likes. One of them from her mother. By 5 p.m., my day had turned into a highlight reel. Investors satisfied. Staff confused but loyal. PR in my favor. My wife silently combusting somewhere in her office. I poured myself a small drink. Office drawer bourbon. The emergency bottle every exec keeps for existential clarity. And toasted quietly to the skyline outside my window. To trimming the fat, I murmured. And serving it cold. My phone buzzed again. This time, a text from Jenna. FYI, Mrs. Bennett just told HR she's considering hosting a separate private gala at her expense. I laughed so loud the janitor peeked in. Everything okay, sir? Perfect, I said. Absolutely perfect. If Haley wanted to throw her own event, I'd let her. Nothing highlights a person's ego faster than watching them pay full price for attention. When I finally left the office that evening, the lobby was a graveyard of wilted flowers and unopened catering boxes. The poor intern at the front desk looked up from her computer, wide-eyed. Mr. Bennett, is it true the event's permanently canceled? Yes, I said, pressing the elevator button. Oh, she said, disappointed. It sounded fun. I smiled. Fun's overrated. Try profitable. The elevator doors closed, reflecting my smirk back at me like a mirror in an expensive moral lesson. At home, Baxter greeted me like the only being on earth who didn't care about corporate drama. I poured kibble for him, poured whiskey for me, and sat down to watch the evening news. And there it was, bright and shining on the local business segment. Brightline Holdings CEO cancels gala, redirects funds to employees. The reporter's voice practically purred. Sources say the decision was made to emphasize fiscal responsibility and internal support. Industry leaders are calling it a masterclass in modern leadership. I raised my glass to the TV. Cheers, leadership. A new text flashed on my phone. Haley again. You win. I stared at it for a long moment. Then typed back. No. We both lose. I just lose better. Then I put the phone face down, leaned back, and let the sound of distant thunder roll across the city. Somewhere out there, Haley was probably explaining to a room full of caterers that it's all just a misunderstanding. And me? I was already planning phase 2. Because the Fallout buffet wasn't over yet. I just served the appetizer. There's a particular kind of silence that falls right before a storm hits. The air goes heavy, the lights feel dimmer, and somewhere in the back of your brain a little voice whispers, you might want to start recording this. That was the mood in my house at 7:46 p.m. The day after the Fallout buffet, I was at the stove, making spaghetti like a man who had absolutely nothing to prove. Jazz playing low, glass of wine on the counter, sauce simmering like life was finally simple again. Then came the knock, sharp, urgent, and way too dramatic for the suburbs. I didn't need to check the doorbell cam. There's only one person who knocks like the IRS on performance bonus day, my wife, Haley. I took a sip of wine, turned the heat down, and muttered, and the queen arrives. Another knock, harder this time. Hold your Gucci horses, I called. When I opened the door, there she was, heels, designer trench, hair in that perfectly messy bun that says, I've been crying, but expensively. Her expression was fury with a side of disbelief. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. She snapped before I could even say hi. I gestured to the spaghetti pot. Relax. It's whole grain. Very grounding. Don't you dare joke right now, she said, stepping inside without invitation, trailing perfume and panic. You canceled the gala. I did, I said, stirring the sauce. And yet the world still spins. Wild, isn't it? She threw her bag onto the counter. Do you have any idea what you've done? Of course, I said, handing her a spoon. Try the sauce. You'll see exactly how competent I am. Ryan, this isn't a game. Agreed, I said. It's more like a group project where one person finally did their part. Her mouth fell open. You think this is funny? I had investors, press, clients, and a husband. I interrupted. Remember him? You took him off the guest list. That was a professional decision. I said. And this was a professional cancellation. She groaned, pacing like a trial lawyer building an argument out of thin air. You're unbelievable. Thank you. I get that a lot. Do you realize how unprofessional this looks? Do you realize how unprofessional it is to uninvite your boss? Her eyes widened. You are not my boss. I laughed, actually laughed. Oh, sweetheart. I literally sign your paychecks. You know the little digital signature at the bottom? That's not decorative. Her cheeks flushed crimson. You're being petty. No, I said, turning off the stove. Petty is removing your husband from a guest list. This. I spread my arms like a magician revealing the trick. This is poetry. She scoffed. You just humiliated me in front of everyone we know. Correction, I said, setting 2 plates on the counter. You humiliated yourself. I just hit reply all. She glared at me for a full 10 seconds, then finally dropped into a chair like her legs had given up. You don't get it, do you? She said softly. Oh, I get it, I said, handing her a fork. You wanted the spotlight. You just forgot who pays the electric bill. She didn't eat, just stared at the steaming noodles like they held answers. Do you really hate me that much? That one hit harder than I expected. I leaned against the counter, folded my arms, and took a slow breath. I don't hate you, Haley, I said quietly. I just stopped letting you narrate my life. She blinked, caught off guard. That's dramatic. Maybe, I said. But you turned our marriage into a press release. You're the headline, I'm the fine print. That's not fair. Neither was being introduced to clients as the guy who handles numbers. Her voice cracked. I was proud of you. Really? Because it sounded a lot like, here's my husband, the background character. She looked down, twisting the napkin in her hands. You've changed. I smiled. No, I just finally stopped apologizing for existing. The silence stretched long enough for the spaghetti to start sticking together. Finally, she sighed. I know I went too far. I shouldn't have taken you off the guest list. Good, I said. Acknowledgement is step 1. But, she continued, you could have talked to me instead of detonating my career. Haley, I said, leaning forward, talking to you doesn't work. Talking to you is like emailing customer service. You get an automated response 3 days later that says, we value your feedback. She almost smiled, almost. You think you're clever. I don't think, I said. I know. It's what keeps the lights on. Her expression hardened again. You've made me a laughingstock. I shrugged. If people are laughing, at least they're paying attention. Do you even care about our reputation? Which one? The corporate one or the marriage one? Because I'd argue one was already tanking. She slammed her fork down. You are impossible. And yet, somehow, I'm still CEO, I said, sipping my wine. She stood up, pacing again. So what's your endgame, Ryan? You want me to quit? You want to ruin me? I looked at her calmly. No, I want you to remember who helped build your castle before you started locking the gates. Her eyes softened just a fraction. I was just trying to prove myself. To who? I asked. Me? The investors? Your mother? She didn't answer. That's the problem, I said. You're always performing. Every dinner, every meeting, every gala, you're on stage. Meanwhile, I'm the guy sweeping up confetti afterward. She looked up. So what now? Now, I said. We eat. Then we act like adults. Adults? She repeated. Yeah, you remember those? The ones who use communication instead of PR statements. She laughed despite herself. You're such an ass. I've been called worse, I said, serving her plate. But you should eat. Spite burns calories. She gave a reluctant half-smile, took a bite, then sighed. Damn it. It's actually good. Thank you, I said. Revenge pairs beautifully with marinara. For a few blessed minutes, we ate in silence. The tension didn't disappear, but it cooled, like 2 boxers realizing the bell had rung. Then, right as I started to think we might actually have a normal human evening, she said it. I think people are starting to question your judgment. I set my fork down. Whose people? Mine, she said carefully. Clients, vendors. They're wondering what's going on between us. Between us. I echoed. They should worry about what's going on between their invoices and my approval stamp. She rolled her eyes. Ryan. No, really, I said. They should be thrilled. The company's saving money, morale's up, and the press loves me. What's the problem? The problem, she snapped, is that they think I've lost control. I smiled. You did. She froze. Not because I took it, I continued, but because you handed it over the moment you started believing your own press. Her mouth opened, then closed. No words came out. That was new. Eventually, she gathered her things, muttering something about needing air. I walked her to the door, not out of chivalry, but because I didn't trust her not to steal the good cutlery. She paused on the porch, turning back. You think you've won, don't you? I smiled faintly. Haley, I didn't know we were keeping score. But if we are, I'm definitely ahead. Her eyes narrowed. This isn't over. Of course not, I said. Nothing worthwhile ever is. Then she stormed off, heels clicking down the walkway like punctuation marks on a very dramatic paragraph. I shut the door behind her, leaned against it, and exhaled. The quiet that followed was intoxicating, like stepping out of a meeting that could have been an email. I went back to the kitchen, poured the rest of the wine, and turned off the lights. The city outside glowed through the window, soft and indifferent. Somewhere out there, Haley was probably rewriting the story again, trying to make herself the heroine. Let her. Heroes need villains. I was fine being the misunderstood executive with good lighting. I sat at the table, forked up one last bite of spaghetti, and said to Baxter, who had wandered in, "You know, buddy, marriage is like a merger. Everyone's excited until someone audits the books." He wagged his tail. Best audience I'd had all week. Around midnight, I got a text from Sharon. Heard she showed up. How's the fallout? I typed back. She yelled. I cooked. I won. You're impossible. That's my brand. Then I set the phone face down and finally let myself laugh. Not the bitter kind, but the genuine, belly-deep laugh of a man who knows he just survived round one and still has most of his dignity intact. Before bed, I checked my email one last time. Among the flood of updates and investor thank yous, one new message stood out. Subject, regarding internal leadership dynamics. It was from HR, politely asking if I'd like to schedule a restorative mediation session with Mrs. Bennett. I stared at it, chuckled, and typed back. Decline. Please reallocate the time to wellness training. I'm feeling great. Then I shut the laptop, turned off the lights, and climbed into bed, the sheets cool and clean and gloriously empty. Some people would call what I did cruel. Others would call it justice. Me? I called it balance. Because after years of being muted in my own marriage, I'd finally found my volume knob. And damn, did it sound good. There's a rare kind of silence that follows total destruction. The quiet hum of a man who has nothing left to lose and just enough coffee to feel smug about it. That was me 2 days after Haley's meltdown at my door. I'd blocked her calls, muted her mother, and set my ringtone to something soothing, rain sounds, because nothing says inner peace like the digital version of Seattle. My phone sat face down on the desk while I leaned back in my chair, enjoying the smell of freshly printed contracts and freedom. The world, shockingly, hadn't ended. Investors were happy, employees were motivated, and the HR department had started referring to me as Zen Daddy behind my back. I didn't mind. I'd earned that title. I spent the morning at the golf course with Sharon, my lawyer-turned-wingwoman, who had a swing that could humble professional athletes and a mouth that could make them blush. She adjusted her visor, lined up a shot, and said, "You know, you could fire your wife legally." I could, I said, teeing up, but watching her try to explain all this to 200 angry guests is better entertainment. Cheaper too. She smirked. You're terrifying when you're calm. That's the goal, I said, watching my ball sail clean down the fairway. Calm is just anger with better posture. While the world thought I was on vacation, I was quietly rewriting power structures. New vendor agreements? Under my name. Company policies? Adjusted. Even the office coffee subscription, mine now. Haley used to control everything from event budgets to who got the good parking spots. Not anymore. Every single decision now came through me. It was glorious. Meanwhile, Brightline's internal chat was chaos theater. Someone had leaked the rumor that I'd canceled the gala out of marital spite, and the gossip train was running express. Messages flew by like stock tickers. Did he really do it to teach her a lesson? No way, he's too chill for that. My cousin works in HR. She says he meditates before firing people. I couldn't resist. Under an anonymous username, I typed. He doesn't meditate. He hydrates. The thread exploded. I sat back, sipping my water bottle like a monk who'd just won an argument with God. Then, right around noon, I caught a glimpse of Haley on the office security feed. She was in her department, flailing her arms like a PowerPoint on fire, trying to convince her staff that everything was under control. It wasn't. For a split second, I almost felt bad. Then I remembered the words, Ryan, the guy who works in finance. And the sympathy evaporated faster than my patience. I closed the feed, smiled, and whispered, let her perform. I wrote the script. And just like that, Calm had never felt more like revenge with a manicure. By day 3, Haley had switched from rage to diplomacy, a predictable transition in the 5 stages of getting publicly humbled. Denial, anger, negotiation, coffee, and PR. She walked into my office with the kind of forced sweetness that could give you diabetes. She was holding a Starbucks cup like a peace offering. "Babe," she started, voice soft and syrupy. "Can we talk?" I didn't even look up from my laptop. "Sure," I said, "just not during working hours." Her smile twitched. "I brought your favorite, caramel latte, extra shot." "How thoughtful," I said, typing an email. "You mean the same drink I was holding when you had me erased from your guest list? Brings back memories." She sighed dramatically, the way actresses do when the director says, "less emotion," and they take it personally. "Ryan, I overreacted. I was under pressure, okay? I just wanted everything perfect." I finally looked up. "You uninvited me, Haley. That's not perfection. That's comedy." "Please," she said, lowering herself into the chair across from me. "Let's just put this behind us. You can come to the event." "Which event?" I asked. "The one I canceled?" She blinked. "We can reschedule. Rebrand. Make it even better. The relaunch of Bright Line." "Oh, catchy," I said, nodding. "But next time, I'll handle the guest list. Wouldn't want to get ghosted again." Her expression cracked. "Is this revenge?" "No," I said, leaning back. "It's a performance review." Her jaw tightened. "You're impossible. And you're consistent," I said. "But I'll give you credit. You're persistent. Like a bad ad that keeps showing up after you already bought the product." She didn't laugh. "The investors are nervous, Ryan. They think we're fighting." "Oh, we're not fighting," I said. "Fighting requires equal footing." "You're explaining." "I'm listening." Her lips trembled. "You don't have to do this." "Do what?" I asked. "Drink my coffee? Run my company? Exist?" She rolled her eyes and stood. "You'll regret this." I smiled, sipping the latte she'd brought. "Maybe, but it'll be after lunch." She left without another word, her heels clicking down the hall like punctuation marks on a failed press release. When she was gone, I checked my inbox. HR had just confirmed the transfer. The $70,000 gala deposit was officially redirected to the Employee Wellness Fund. I grinned. Perfect, not because I'd want to fight, but because she'd finally realized she wasn't the audience anymore. She'd built her image on applause, and I'd taken away the stage. The apology tour was canceled too. A week later, I decided to throw my own event. Same date, same venue, same caterer. Only difference? The guest list didn't include a single person who called me Ryan from finance. I called it the real backbone of Brightline. The theme? Gratitude, with a side of irony. When I walked into the ballroom that night, the air didn't smell like ego and expensive perfume. It smelled like barbecue sliders, cheap champagne, and actual joy. The janitors were laughing at the dessert table, the drivers were doing selfies near the stage, and the IT guy, who I swear has never smiled before, was dancing like rent just got paid. I grabbed the mic, clinked my glass, and said, "To those who never made the guest list but kept the lights on, tonight, you're VIP." The room erupted. Applause, laughter, relief. No pretense, no networking, just people being people. The irony wasn't lost on me. Haley had spent months planning a party meant to impress the investors. I threw one in a week and got more heart, laughter, and loyalty in 2 hours than she's earned in 5 years. Halfway through the night, the company accountant, Walter, 60, nervous energy, permanently looks like he misplaced his keys, pulled me aside. "Sir," he whispered, "you know your wife's watching this live stream, right?" I smiled. "Perfect. Tell her we saved her a plate. It's humble pie." He nearly dropped his drink. I gave a short speech after that, shorter than usual, because nobody wants a monologue between free food and music. "Look," I said, "you've all worked hard. You deserve this. And sometimes leadership isn't about fancy dinners or press photos. It's about showing up for the people who actually make things happen." The cheers that followed were the loudest kind, authentic. I stood there for a second, taking it in. For the first time in months, maybe years, I wasn't the guy sitting quietly in the background while someone else took credit. I was the man at the front of the room, surrounded by people who actually mattered. The DJ played "Don't Stop Believin'," which felt cheesy and perfect all at once. Someone shoved a drink into my hand. Someone else dragged me onto the dance floor. And for a brief moment, Life didn't feel like a war. It felt like a win. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught the live stream chat blowing up, employees tagging Haley with laughing emojis, toasts to the real boss. One person even writing, "Finally, a party worth attending." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Sometimes silence is the best victory speech. By Monday morning, the internet had already done its thing. My little employee appreciation night wasn't just company gossip anymore. It was trending. Hashtag Brightline Real Team. Photos flooded social media. Me handing out bonuses, the janitors doing conga lines, the catering staff toasting with paper cups. The post Haley's PR team had scheduled for her grand gala got buried faster than her LinkedIn endorsements. I walked into the office like a man who had finally deleted a bad memory. People clapped. Actual applause. Someone even whistled. I gave a mock bow and said, "Please, no autographs before coffee." By 10 a.m., my assistant walked in holding a printed stack of news articles. "You're in business today, modern leadership," and someone just made a meme of you pouring champagne labeled fiscal responsibility. "Finally," I said, "a brand I can stand behind." At 10:17, the elevator dinged, and in walked Haley, dressed to kill, or at least maim. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept since the hashtag was born. She closed the door behind her, didn't speak for a full 10 seconds, then asked softly, "So, what now?" I didn't even look up from my screen. "Now," I said, "now we get back to work." "Ryan," she said, voice cracking. "Everyone's talking. The investors, the staff, the board. I can't even walk into a meeting without people whispering." I turned my chair slowly, the way villains do in movies before they reveal the plot twist. "Then maybe," I said, "it's time to stop walking into meetings." She frowned. "What does that mean?" I slid a folder across the desk. "Your resignation letter. I'd like it by Friday." Her eyes went wide. "You're firing me?" "No," I said, leaning back. "I'm promoting your freedom." She stared at me, furious, humiliated, and maybe, deep down, a little impressed. "You can't just erase me." "Of course not," I said, smiling. "You'll always be part of Brightline's history, just not its future." She stood there for a moment, trembling, then finally gathered her bag. "You're going to regret this." I shook my head. "Haley, I already regretted staying quiet this long." When she left, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt lighter, like someone had taken a 20-pound trophy off my chest. Later that evening, I walked into the now empty ballroom where it all began. The lights shimmered softly, and the ghost of last week's chaos felt almost peaceful. For years, I'd been written out of my own story, quiet, patient, polite. But now, I was rewriting it, one clause, one contract, one decision at a time. I raised a glass to no one in particular and said softly, "To the man who was removed from the guest list and decided to own the party instead." And damn, that toast never tasted better.